The 52nd floor of the Manhattan high-rise belonged to men who controlled the world with keystrokes and handshakes. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Mark Thompson surveyed the city below as if appraising property he might acquire. At 32, his corner office already displayed the curated symbols of success: Harvard diplomas in burnished frames, photographs with 2 senators and a Supreme Court justice, and a rare first-edition Fitzgerald displayed with casual prominence. Mark straightened his Hermes tie, glancing at his watch. A Patek Philippe, understated enough for those who recognized true luxury. The October sunlight caught the gold links of his cufflinks as he reviewed quarterly projections that would make lesser investors salivate. "Mr. Thompson, your 3 o'clock is here," his assistant announced through the intercom. "Give me 2 minutes," he replied, voice crisp with authority. The Wall Street investment fund he directed was acquiring promising startups at an aggressive pace. Mark had earned his reputation by identifying opportunities and discarding problematic investments with unwavering precision. People were investments too, he believed, some worth cultivating, others best cut from the portfolio before they drained resources. 12 miles and a socio-economic universe away, Sofia Rodriguez hurried through the back entrance of the Wellington Hotel in a pressed black uniform. At 26, her dark eyes held an intensity that belied her position as catering staff. The daughter of Mexican immigrants who had settled in Phoenix, Sofia had moved to New York 3 years earlier with dreams larger than her studio apartment in Queens. "Sofia, Station 3 needs refills," her supervisor barked as she tied her apron. "On it," she nodded, grabbing a tray of champagne flutes. Between morning shifts at a Wall Street coffee shop and evening catering gigs, Sofia attended night classes at the community college, stubbornly pursuing a business administration degree. Her textbooks, highlighted and annotated in meticulous handwriting, waited in her locker for the subway ride home. The benefit gala buzzed with New York's financial elite. Sofia moved efficiently between clusters of Armani suits and Chanel dresses, offering champagne with a practiced smile that never revealed her scrutiny of these powerful figures. She absorbed their conversations like a student: market trends, investment strategies, names of companies rising and falling. "Excuse me." A male voice cut through her concentration. Sofia turned to find a tall man with commanding blue eyes regarding her with unexpected interest. His tailored suit and confident stance marked him as someone accustomed to attention. "Would you mind bringing the crab canapes to this corner? My associates haven't tried them," he said, gesturing to a group of men nearby. "Of course, sir. Right away." When she returned with the tray, he selected one and maintained eye contact as he tasted it. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sofia. Mark Thompson." He offered his hand, an unusual gesture toward catering staff. "These are excellent. You have good taste." "I just served them, Mr. Thompson. I didn't select the menu." "But you knew exactly which tray to bring." His smile revealed perfect teeth. "That shows discernment." The conversation lasted barely 2 minutes, but as Sofia moved to other guests, she felt his gaze following her. At the end of the night, as staff cleared tables, the maitre d' approached her. "Sofia, a guest left this for you." He handed her a business card with a handwritten note. "Coffee tomorrow? I'd like to discuss your discernment further. Mark." A phone number was scrawled beneath. 2 days later, Sofia sat across from Mark at an elegant cafe far from her usual haunts. Her single day off had been spent agonizing over her wardrobe, finally selecting a modest blue dress purchased on sale last season. "Tell me about yourself," Mark prompted, studying her over a porcelain espresso cup. "There's not much to tell. I work at Grindstone Coffee near Wall Street mornings, cater events evenings, and take night classes in business administration." Mark leaned forward. The classic American immigrant story, working relentlessly toward something better. His smile seemed genuine. "I admire that kind of determination." Over the next hour, Mark shared his own trajectory. Harvard undergraduate, Harvard Business School, rapid rise through investment banking ranks. He mentioned weekend homes and boarding school connections with practiced nonchalance. "Why business classes?" he asked her. "I want to build something," Sophia replied, eyes brightening. "Something that solves real problems. My community back home struggles with basics Americans take for granted. Clean water, reliable infrastructure. I believe business solutions can address these issues more efficiently than charity." Mark's expression shifted, surprise, then assessment, as if recalculating her value. That first coffee led to dinner the following week, then weekend outings to art galleries and hidden restaurants in neighborhoods affluent New Yorkers rarely visited. Mark seemed fascinated by Sophia's perspective, her immigrant optimism, her practical approach to systemic problems. "You see opportunities others miss," he told her one evening, 3 months into their relationship, as they walked along the Hudson River. "It's a valuable skill in my world." Sophia's small apartment in Queens became their refuge from Manhattan's scrutiny. There, Mark seemed to relax, shedding his Wall Street persona. Yet she noticed he never invited her to functions with colleagues, never introduced her to business associates, never suggested meeting in neighborhoods where he might encounter his peer group. 6 months into their relationship, on a crisp December evening, Sophia prepared chicken mole from her grandmother's recipe in her tiny kitchen. The table was set with thrift store china she'd carefully selected, a single candle lending warmth to the modest setting. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the silverware. The pregnancy test that morning had shown 2 unmistakable pink lines. After the initial shock, Sophia had spent hours calculating possibilities. Her savings, minimal, her work schedule, already exhausting, her support system, limited in New York. But beneath the practical concerns beat a current of unexpected joy. A child with Mark, perhaps this unplanned development would deepen their connection. Mark arrived bearing an expensive bottle of wine, kissing her distractedly while checking messages on his phone. "Something smells amazing," he said, finally pocketing the device. "My grandmother's recipe, a family tradition." Sophia took a deep breath. "Mark, before we eat, I need to tell you something." He looked up, sensing her tone. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. It's unexpected, but I'm pregnant." Mark's expression transformed so completely it was as if a mask had been removed, revealing someone Sophia had never met. His eyes, warm moments before, turned to ice. "You're what?" "Pregnant. I just found out this morning." Mark set down his wine glass with deliberate control. "You're on birth control. It's not 100% effective," the doctor explained. "Jesus Christ, Sophia." He stood abruptly, pacing the small space between table and countertop. "You really thought this was a good idea?" "It wasn't planned, Mark. But now that it's happening, do you have any concept of my life right now?" His voice rose. "I'm up for executive director next quarter. My 5-year plan does not include an unplanned pregnancy with a—" He stopped himself, but the unspoken assessment hung in the air. "With a what, Mark?" Sophia's voice was suddenly steady. "A barista? An immigrant?" "This is about timing and compatibility," he said, voice clinical now. "I'm not in a position to start a family. Certainly not now. Not with my career trajectory." The chicken mole grew cold as their conversation devolved into painful territory. Mark suggested handling the situation with a clinical detachment that made Sophia flinch. When she refused to discuss termination, he left abruptly, saying he needed time to think. A week passed with minimal communication. Sophia attended her first prenatal appointment alone, the technician's cheerful chatter about heartbeats a surreal counterpoint to her inner turmoil. "Ms. Rodriguez, I see not 1, not 2, but 3 distinct heartbeats," the technician announced, eyes widening at the monitor. "Congratulations! You're carrying triplets!" Sophia's world tilted sideways. "Triplets? Are you certain?" 100%. See here, here, and here?" The technician pointed to 3 flickering pulses. Identical from the positioning. All girls, I'd wager. 3 children. 3 hearts already beating inside her. The subway ride home passed in a daze of calculations and fears. Her tiny apartment, her multiple jobs, her incomplete degree. How could she possibly manage 3 infants alone? But Mark would help, surely. Once he processed the shock, his sense of responsibility would surface. They would find a way forward together. That evening, she called him with trembling fingers. "We need to talk," she said when he answered. "I'm heading into a meeting. Can it wait?" "It's Triplets, Mark." Silence stretched across the connection. "I'll meet you tomorrow. My place, 7 o'clock. Mark's apartment overlooked Central Park from 38 floors up. Floor-to-ceiling windows displayed a winter tableau of snow-dusted trees and distant skaters. Sophia had visited twice before, always feeling like an intruder in the minimalist space with its designer furniture and abstract art. Mark handed her a glass of water. Not wine, she noted, a small acknowledgement of her condition. "Triplets," he said flatly. "You're certain?" "I saw the ultrasound. 3 heartbeats." He nodded, processing. "This changes everything." For one hopeful moment, Sophia thought he meant he was reconsidering, accepting their new reality. Then he continued, "You are completely unsuitable for my life, Sophia." His voice was oddly gentle, as if explaining a difficult concept to a child. No family connections, no elite education, no refinement. It was entertaining while it lasted, but an immigrant without a Harvard degree will never be sufficient for a man of my caliber. And 3 babies? That's absolutely incompatible with my future. The clinical cruelty of his assessment sucked the air from the room. Sophia watched in numb disbelief as Mark moved to a closet, methodically removing the few belongings he kept at her apartment, a spare tie, running shoes, toiletries, and placing them in a leather weekend bag. "How can you do this?" she finally managed, her voice barely audible. "How can I possibly raise 3 daughters alone?" "That's not my problem." Mark's tone remained distant, professional. He placed an envelope on the glass coffee table. "There's $2,000 here. Do what you want with it and with this situation. Don't contact me again." $2,000? For 3 lives? For everything we've shared? "We shared some enjoyable moments, Sophia. Let's not romanticize what was essentially a temporary diversion." He zipped his bag closed. "I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're resourceful." The door closed behind him with a soft, final click. Sophia stood frozen in the center of his living room, the envelope untouched on the table, her hands protectively cradling her still flat abdomen. The following weeks passed in a blur of deteriorating circumstances. Morning sickness struck with vicious intensity. 3 times the hormones, 3 times the nausea, her doctor explained. Her manager at the coffee shop noticed her frequent bathroom breaks and diminished energy, reducing her hours until you're feeling better. The catering company had strict appearance requirements. They would call when they needed her, they said, but bookings mysteriously disappeared. By January, with rent due and savings dwindling, Sophia received an eviction notice, the first in her life. Her landlord's sympathetic but firm explanation about business realities echoed Mark's detachment. That night, she slept on her co-worker Luisa's couch, her possessions in 2 suitcases beside her. The bitter January cold penetrated her inadequate coat as she finally made the call she'd been avoiding. "Mama, Papa, lo siento mucho," she sobbed into the phone, finally confessing her situation in rapid Spanish. Her parents' initial shock gave way to immediate, if limited, support. They sold their only car, her father's pride, maintained meticulously for 15 years, and wired her the $4,000, all they could spare from their modest savings. With these funds, Sophia secured a tiny studio in the Bronx, far from Manhattan's glittering skyline where Mark continued his ascent. The apartment was barely legal, a converted storage space with minimal kitchen facilities and a bathroom where the shower soaked the entire floor. But it was shelter, a place to prepare for the lives growing inside her. In March, as her pregnancy became impossible to conceal, the coffee shop manager called her into his office. "Sophia, "Your productivity has dropped significantly in recent months," he began, avoiding her eyes. "We've decided to let you go." The scripted termination speech continued, but Sophia barely heard the words. Her hand instinctively moved to her prominent belly, now visibly carrying 3 lives. That evening, sitting on the floor of her empty apartment, she'd sold most furniture to cover utilities, Sophia surveyed her situation with brutal clarity. Bank balance, $267. 42. Due date, approximately 2 months away. Support system, Louisa, who worked double shifts herself. Parents who had already sacrificed their transportation to help her. Her gaze fell on a discarded business magazine she'd found on the subway, flipped open to a small article about Wall Street's rising stars. Mark's face smiled confidently from the page, the caption noting his strategic vision and unerring ability to identify promising opportunities. Something shifted in Sophia's core as she stared at the man who had deemed her and her unborn daughters worthless. A cold, clarifying anger replaced the despair that had clouded her thinking for months. "He's wrong about me," she whispered, caressing her belly. "He's wrong about us. I'm going to prove it." That night, Sophia created a methodical plan. First, work that would accommodate 3 newborns. Using her rudimentary web design skills from community college courses, she posted offers for basic services online. Next, free entrepreneurship workshops at the public library, which she attended with her ever-growing belly, absorbing every principle, every strategy. In May 2008, Olivia, Emma, and Ava Rodriguez entered the world prematurely, tiny but fierce. Alone in the delivery room except for Louisa's steadfast presence, Sophia made a solemn promise to the 3 identical girls with their unmistakable blue eyes, Mark's eyes. "We're going to build something so extraordinary that one day he'll look at us and realize the colossal mistake he made. Not for revenge, my little ones, but to show the world he was wrong about what we're capable of." As she cradled her daughters, Sophia couldn't imagine that 15 years later she would be in the same room as Mark, not as a server, but as a billionaire honoree with 3 prodigies he would never know. The stark white ceiling of the delivery room swirled above Sophia as another contraction tore through her body. Unlike the idealized birth scenes from movies, there was no soft lighting, no partner holding her hand, no carefully curated playlist, just the harsh fluorescent glare and the clinical efficiency of a public hospital. "Push, Ms. Rodriguez," the doctor instructed, voice muffled behind a surgical mask. "We need to get these babies out now." Sophia gripped Louisa's hand so tightly her friend winced but didn't pull away. The absence of an epidural, a luxury her limited emergency Medicaid didn't fully cover, meant every sensation carved itself into her memory with excruciating clarity. "I can't," Sophia gasped, exhaustion overwhelming her after 20 hours of labor. "Yes, you can," Louisa whispered fiercely in her ear. "You're the strongest person I know." Another contraction built, and Sophia channeled all her rage, fear, and determination into one final primal push. The room filled with a tiny, indignant cry. "Baby A is here," the doctor announced. "It's a girl." Before Sophia could process this miracle, her body demanded attention for the next delivery. 14 minutes later, the second baby emerged, and 7 minutes after that, the third completed the trio. The NICU team worked swiftly, whisking the tiny infants to incubators. "They're so small," Sophia whispered, catching only glimpses of reddish skin and miniature limbs. 34 weeks is actually good for triplets, the nurse reassured her. "They're fighters, just like their mother." Hours later, when Sophia had been transferred to a recovery room, a different nurse wheeled her to the NICU. The 3 identical girls lay in separate incubators, connected to monitors and tubes that seemed impossibly large against their 4-pound bodies. "Would you like to touch them?" the nurse asked gently. Sophia nodded, unable to speak. She placed her finger in the small opening of the first incubator, and her daughter, Olivia, she'd decided, reflexively grasped it. The simple contact unleashed a flood of emotions Sophia had been holding at bay. "They all have the same eye color," the nurse commented, checking the monitors. "Beautiful blue. They must get that from their father." The observation struck Sophia like a physical blow. These innocent babies carried Mark's genes. His eyes, perhaps his intelligence, maybe even elements of his personality. For a moment she wondered if she would see his coldness in them someday. "No," she said aloud, startling the nurse. "They're nothing like him. They'll never be like him." When the smallest one, Ava, opened her eyes and seemed to look directly at Sophia, she made her promise. Leaning close to the incubator, with Louisa standing respectful guard at the door, Sophia whispered words that would define the next 15 years. "We're going to build something so extraordinary that one day he'll look at us and realize the colossal mistake he made. Not for revenge, my little ones, but to show the world he was wrong about what we're capable of." 2 weeks later, the hospital released Sophia and her daughters into a world entirely unprepared for them. The tiny Bronx studio apartment had been transformed into a makeshift nursery with second-hand furniture and donated baby items. 3 bassinets, 1 proper one from Goodwill and 2 sturdy laundry baskets padded with blankets, lined the wall opposite her pull-out sofa bed. The first night alone was terrifying. Every squeak, every breath from the triplets sent Sophia rushing to check them. By morning, she had slept perhaps 45 minutes in total, her eyes burning from exhaustion as she tried to establish a feeding schedule for 3 newborns with her breast milk supply struggling to keep up. "One day at a time," she told herself, a mantra that would sustain her through the months ahead. The brutal reality of raising triplets alone quickly established itself. Each day became an endless cycle of feeding, changing, soothing, and stealing moments to work on her fledgling web design business while the girls slept. She developed a rotation system. While one baby nursed, she would hold a second against her shoulder, with the third temporarily content in the bouncer seat rescued from a sidewalk-free pile. Sleep came in 90-minute increments at best. Her body ached constantly from contorting to care for multiple infants simultaneously. The small apartment filled with the smell of diapers, baby formula, to supplement her insufficient milk, and the instant coffee that kept her functioning. Her parents called daily from Phoenix, their voices tight with worry. "Mija, let us come help," her mother begged. "You can't leave Papa alone with his heart condition," Sophia reminded her. "And you both need to work. I'm managing." Managing was a generous description. When the triplets were 2 months old, the electric bill went unpaid because Sophia had to choose between electricity and the specialized formula Ava needed for her reflux issues. A sympathetic social worker helped her apply for WIC benefits, but the bureaucracy moved slowly, and hunger didn't wait for paperwork. The laptop became her lifeline. While the babies slept, Sophia hunched over the keyboard, teaching herself HTML and basic CSS through free online tutorials. Her first client, the owner of a small florist shop who needed a simple website, paid her $100, a sum that felt like a fortune as it covered a week of diapers and formula. Summer brought suffocating heat to the poorly ventilated apartment. Without air conditioning, Sophia kept the babies in nothing but diapers, using a spray bottle to mist their skin hourly. She lost 15 pounds she couldn't afford to lose, her clothes hanging from a frame already depleted by the demands of nursing 3 infants. By fall, Sophia had established a precious routine. Each morning she loaded the triplets into a second-hand triple stroller, a miraculous find from an online parents group, and walked to the public library. There, in the blessed air conditioning, she could access faster internet while the babies napped in their stroller. The librarians, initially wary of the potential disruption, became allies when they saw Sophia's determination, often holding a fussy baby so she could complete a project deadline. "What are you working on today?" Ms. Gladwell, the head librarian, would ask, gently bouncing Emma on her hip. "Learning JavaScript," Sophia would answer, eyes never leaving the screen. "It'll help me build more interactive websites." At night, when the babies finally slept, Sophia devoured business books, absorbing principles of entrepreneurship, marketing, and financial management. She filled notebooks with plans and ideas, refusing to let exhaustion dim her ambition. The triplets grew at an astonishing pace, developing distinct personalities despite their identical appearance. Olivia, the firstborn, watched everything with intense focus. Emma vocalized constantly, experimenting with sounds. Ava, the smallest, observed quietly before attempting any new skill, but once mastered, executed it perfectly. When winter arrived, bringing bitter cold to New York, disaster struck. The ancient heating system in the building failed during the worst snowstorm in decades. Temperatures inside the apartment dropped to 50 degrees, then 45, then 40. 3 days minimum for repairs, the superintendent informed her apologetically. The part has to come from Pennsylvania, and the roads are closed. That night, Sophia gathered every blanket and piece of clothing she owned, creating a nest on her pull-out bed. She placed the triplets against her body, using her own warmth to keep them comfortable, rotating them throughout the night so each had turns in the warmest central position. For 3 nights, they survived this way. Sophia barely slept, terrified that one of the babies would develop pneumonia or worse. By the 3rd morning, her throat was scratchy, and Olivia had developed a worrying cough. $300 to expedite the part, the superintendent told her. Building owner says tenants can contribute if they want heat faster. Sophia looked at her bank account. 347s. 92s. The decision should have been obvious. Pay for the expedited part and keep her daughters warm. But another option formed in her mind, one that seemed irrational yet compelling. That afternoon, while the triplets napped under every blanket available, Sophia purchased an advanced web development course online for $299. Instead of buying immediate warmth, she invested in her future ability to provide. That night, as they huddled together against the cold, Sophia whispered to her daughters, "This sacrifice will be worth it. We're investing in our independence." She boiled water on the gas stove continuously, creating steam to warm the apartment and ease Olivia's cough. They survived the 4th night, and on the 5th day, the heat returned when the regular shipment finally arrived. By the time the triplets reached 6 months, Sophia had established a modest client base for her web design services. She worked while they napped, during their tummy time, and deep into the night after they fell asleep. Her eyes developed permanent shadows, and her once lustrous hair lost its shine, but her skills grew sharper with each completed project. The first significant transfer to her bank account, $500 for a complete website redesign, felt like winning the lottery. Sophia stared at the notification on her phone, tears streaming down her face as Ava babbled in her lap. "See this?" she told her daughter, showing her the screen. "This is the beginning." That night, after the triplets were asleep, Sophia created her first formal business plan. At her small kitchen table, using a notebook from the dollar store, she outlined her path forward. The heading at the top read, "SR Web Design, established 2008, profitable by 2009. The goals she set were ambitious, bordering on impossible. Triple client base within 6 months, develop expertise in e-commerce websites, create proprietary templates to speed up production, establish business as LLC before triplets' first birthday, move to larger apartment by first birthday. She added a final goal, one that seemed almost fantastical. Own company, not just freelance business, by girl's first birthday. As winter gave way to spring, Sophia's routine evolved. The library visits continued, but now she brought flashcards to stimulate the baby's developing minds. While waiting for files to upload, she taught them colors, shapes, and the beginnings of both English and Spanish vocabulary. "Bilingual children have cognitive advantages," she explained to Ms. Gladwell, "and they'll need every advantage I can give them." The triplets' first birthday approached, and with it, a milestone Sophia had barely dared to hope for. Her client list had grown steadily, with 3 regular customers providing consistent income. She had learned to work with devastating efficiency, completing in 1 hour tasks that once took 3. On the night before the girls turned 1 year old, Sophia sat on her sofa bed, laptop open to her bank account. The balance, 3,872, represented countless hours of work stolen from sleep, innumerable sacrifices, and relentless determination. It wasn't wealth by any measure, but it was enough for what came next. "Tomorrow," she promised the sleeping triplets, "we celebrate 2 birthdays, yours and our businesses." The small birthday celebration the next day consisted of a homemade cake, Louisa as the only guest, and 3 wide-eyed 1-year-olds uncertain what to make of the candles. But on the table beside the cake sat Sophia's real gift to her daughters, a new laptop purchased with her earnings, its processing power quadruple her old machines. "This," she told them, though they couldn't understand, "is what will build our future." As she heated water on the stove to bathe her daughters that evening, Sophia didn't know that she was planting the seeds of an idea that, in less than a decade, would revolutionize the technology industry and make her one of the most influential women in America. The morning of the triplets' first birthday dawned with rare sunshine streaming through the small window of Sophia's Bronx apartment. She had been awake since 4, putting final touches on the simple decorations. Paper streamers rescued from a dollar store clearance bin and balloons inflated by her own light-headed efforts. 3 tiny party hats sat on the kitchen counter, a small extravagance she'd allowed herself after completing a rush website project the previous week. "1 year," she whispered, watching her daughters sleep peacefully in their cribs. Proper cribs now, second-hand but sturdy, replacing the laundry baskets that had served as makeshift beds in those first desperate months. As if sensing her mother's gaze, Olivia opened her eyes first. Always the earliest riser, always the most alert. Her blue eyes, so hauntingly like Mark's, held none of his coldness. Instead, they sparkled with curiosity and intelligence that sometimes startled Sophia with its intensity. "Good morning, birthday girl," Sophia murmured, lifting her firstborn. Emma and Ava stirred, their internal clocks synchronized in that mysterious way of multiples. Within moments, all 3 were awake, babbling their morning greetings in a mixture of recognizable words and invented language. The birthday celebration was modest by most standards. A homemade cake with vanilla frosting, 3 small candles clustered in the center, and Louisa as the sole guest. But to Sophia, it represented triumph against impossible odds. 1 year of survival, 1 year of growth, 1 year without him. "Make a wish for them," Louisa suggested as Sophia prepared to blow out the candles. "They're already coming true," Sophia replied, nodding toward the kitchen table where her new laptop sat, still in its box. The machine was refurbished but powerful, purchased with the profits from her growing web design business. Beside it lay the paperwork for SR Web Design LLC, officially registered the previous week, making her small business a legal entity exactly as she had promised herself. After cake and the messy delight of watching 3 one-year-olds destroy their small portions, Louisa helped clean up while Sophia unwrapped the laptop. "This will double my productivity," Sophia explained, running her fingers reverently over the sleek surface. "The processing power alone will cut my design time by half." "You should be proud," Louisa said, wiping frosting from Emma's cheeks. "Most people would have broken under the pressure." Sophia shook her head. "Breaking wasn't an option. I made a promise to them." The following week brought another milestone, a move to a slightly larger apartment in the same building. The new space had a separate bedroom, allowing Sophia to establish a proper work area in the living room instead of balancing her laptop on the kitchen counter. "This is your room," she told the triplets as she arranged their cribs in the bedroom, "and that," she pointed to the folding table now designated as her desk, "is how we'll pay for an even better place next year." As spring settled over New York, Sophia established a rhythm that allowed her to care for her daughters while growing her business. Each morning, they would walk to the local library, the triplets securely strapped in their triple stroller, A miraculous find from a parenting forum for multiples, purchased with 3 installment payments. "Buenos dias, Ms. Gladwell," Sophia would greet the head librarian, who had become a steady ally in her quest for self-education. "Good morning, little scholars," Ms. Gladwell would respond, addressing the triplets who now babbled enthusiastic responses. "What are we learning today?" While the girls explored board books and educational toys in the children's section, Sophia would claim a nearby table, alternating between client work and creating homemade educational materials. During their lunch break in the library's courtyard, she used flashcards to teach them colors, shapes, and words in both English and Spanish. "Rojo," she would say, holding up a red card. "Rojo," the triplets would attempt in unison, Emma always the loudest, Ava's pronunciation the most precise. By 18 months, the girls were speaking in complete sentences, mixing English and Spanish with the natural fluency of bilingual children. Their pediatrician, during a checkup covered by Medicaid, remarked on their exceptional language development. "They're communicating at the level of average 3-year-olds, he noted with raised eyebrows. "Are you doing anything special with them?" Sophia explained her library routine, the dual language exposure, the constant interaction despite her work demands. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up," the doctor advised. "Their cognitive development is remarkable." Those words, simple professional observation, filled Sophia with fierce pride. Every developmental milestone her daughters reached ahead of schedule felt like a personal victory, proof that Mark's assessment of their collective worth had been catastrophically wrong. At night, after tucking the girls into bed, Sophia worked on expanding her skills. She had progressed beyond basic websites to more complex projects, teaching herself JavaScript and PHP through free online resources. Each new technique mastered meant higher-paying clients and greater stability. Yet stability remained relative. When the triplets developed simultaneous ear infections at 20 months, the antibiotics cost more than Sophia had budgeted for medications that month. The resulting financial shuffle, postponing her phone bill, cutting grocery quality, reminded her how precarious their situation remained. "There has to be a better way," she muttered one night, massaging her temples as she reviewed her monthly expenses. Her client list was growing steadily, but the feast or famine nature of freelance work made consistent budgeting nearly impossible. The solution began forming during one of those bleary, sleep-deprived nights that still occurred despite the triplets' improving sleep patterns. Sophia had been juggling 3 projects while trying to keep track of the girls' medication schedules, meal plans, and developmental activities. Her system of sticky notes and smartphone alarms was failing under the complexity. "I need an app just for managing triplets," she complained to Louisa during a rare coffee break. "Something that tracks 3 of everything simultaneously." Louisa chuckled. "You should make one. You're already learning app development, right?" The suggestion, offered casually, took root. Between client projects, Sophia began sketching a simple application designed specifically for parents of multiples. She coded late into the night, testing functions while her daughters slept, creating an interface that allowed tracking of feeding schedules, medication dosages, and developmental milestones for multiple children simultaneously. Triple Mom, she named it, with no marketing plan beyond perhaps sharing it on the Multiples forum where she occasionally sought advice. The app took 3 months to complete, stealing hours from her already minimal sleep time. When she finally uploaded it to the App Store, her expectations were minimal. Perhaps a few dozen downloads from other parents of multiples, maybe some useful feedback for improvements. 2 weeks after the app's launch, Sophia was nursing a cold that all 3 girls had generously shared with her when her phone chimed with an email notification. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez," the message began, "I'm Amanda Chen from Modern Multiples blog. Your Triple Mom app has been a complete sanity saver for me and my twin boys. I'd love to feature it in my next blog post. Would you be willing to answer a few questions about your inspiration and background?" Sophia stared at the email in disbelief. Modern Multiples was the most popular blog in the niche parenting community, with hundreds of thousands of followers. With trembling fingers, she composed a reply, briefly explaining her situation as a single mother of triplets who created the app out of personal necessity. The resulting blog post, Triple Mom, the miracle app created by a real-life supermom, included Sophia's story along with glowing praise for the app's functionality. By the end of the day, downloads had jumped from a few dozen to over 5,000. By the end of the week, that number had climbed to 50,000, with 5-star reviews flooding in. "This app saved my marriage," one review proclaimed. "Finally, someone who understands what it's like to manage multiple babies," wrote another. More surprising than the download numbers were the emails, from investors curious about her next project, from parenting companies interested in partnerships, and from a morning television show requesting an interview with the amazing multitasking mom behind Triple Mom. The phone call from the tech blog caught Sophia completely unprepared. She had just settled the triplets for their afternoon nap when her phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Sofia Rodriguez, developer of Triple Mom?" a professional voice inquired. "Yes, speaking," Sophia replied cautiously, moving to the living room to avoid waking the girls. "This is David Mercer from Tech Insight. We're doing a feature on breakthrough apps by independent developers, and yours has caught our attention. Are you available for a brief interview?" Sophia's heart raced. Tech Insight was a respected industry publication, not a parenting blog. "Yes, of course," she managed, smoothing her unwashed hair reflexively though the caller couldn't see her. The interview focused on the technical aspects of the app, her development process, the challenges of coding while parenting, her background in web design. When David asked about her formal education in computer science, Sophia hesitated before admitting she was entirely self-taught. "Impressive," he commented. "Most successful apps we cover come from developers with formal training. What's next for Triple Mom?" The question caught her off guard. She hadn't planned beyond the initial release, hadn't dared to imagine a next. Expansion to include features for larger multiple births, quadruplets, quintuplets, she improvised, and perhaps a version specifically for multiples with special needs. After the call ended, Sophia checked her app's statistics again. The download count had surpassed 70,000, and the in-app purchases, additional features she'd added as premium options, had generated more revenue in 1 week than her web design business had earned in the previous month. That evening, when she checked her bank account, Sophia had to sit down. The balance represented more money than she had ever had at one time, yet she knew intuitively it was just the beginning. Not enough to change their lives permanently, not enough for true security, but enough to see the path forward more clearly. The following morning, an email arrived that would alter their trajectory decisively. The subject line read, "Invitation to Minority Start Incubator Program." "Dear Ms. Rodriguez," the email began, "your application to the Minority Start Incubator Program has been accepted. We offer 6 months of mentorship, workspace, and potential seed funding to promising entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds. Your Triple Mom app demonstrates exactly the kind of innovative problem-solving our program seeks to nurture." Sophia frowned in confusion. She hadn't applied to any incubator program. Reading further, she discovered that David from Tech Insight had submitted a recommendation on her behalf after their interview. The program offered childcare assistance, technical mentorship, and connections to potential investors. It was exactly what she needed at precisely the right moment, an opportunity that seemed almost miraculous in its timing. That night, after the triplets were asleep, Sophia sat on the edge of her sofa bed, mentally cataloging all that had changed in the mere month since her daughter's first birthday. Her web design business was stable, the Triple Mom app was generating unexpected income, and now this incubator opportunity promised resources she had only dreamed of accessing. "Estamos apenas comenzando, mis estrellas," she whispered toward the bedroom where her daughters slept peacefully. Observing her daughters sleeping after her small initial success, Sophia didn't imagine that in just 5 years she would be on a stage in San Francisco, presenting her revolutionary vision to investors who would compete for the chance to fund her dreams. "Mama, bus, bus!" Ava pointed excitedly out the window of their modest Queen's apartment, her tiny finger pressed against the glass. At 3 years old, the triplets' vocabularies had exploded, with each developing distinct speech patterns that reflected their emerging personalities. Sophia looked up from her laptop, where she'd been responding to emails about her steadily growing web design business. "Yes, mi amor, that's the bus we'll take to your new school tomorrow." The prospect of the triplets starting preschool filled Sophia with a mixture of emotions: pride in their readiness, anxiety about their first significant separation, and cautious optimism about the additional work hours she would gain. The past 3 years had been a grueling marathon of simultaneous childcare and business development, stealing sleep and social life but yielding incremental improvements in their circumstances. "School tomorrow," Emma announced to her sisters, always the communication leader. "We bring lunchboxes." The lunchboxes, brightly colored and purchased from a thrift shop, sat ready on the kitchen counter, each containing the same carefully planned, nutritious meal. Sophia had labeled them meticulously: Olivia's with a small star, Emma's with a heart, and Ava's with a flower, accommodating the fact that the 3 looked so identical that even teachers might confuse them. "Remember our practice?" Sophia asked, closing her laptop to focus on this important preparation. "Say our names when asked," Olivia recited seriously. At just past 3, she already spoke with remarkable clarity and showed a natural inclination toward order and routine. The next morning arrived with the controlled chaos that defined their household. Sophia had been awake since 5, preparing for this momentous day, setting out tiny outfits, double-checking paperwork, and rehearsing the drop-off procedure she'd learned during orientation. By 7:30, the 4 Rodriguez women were walking toward the bus stop, the triplets in matching blue dresses, their dark hair neatly braided. Bright beginnings. Preschool occupied the renovated ground floor of a former factory building. Its cheerful yellow door and playground equipment presented a welcoming facade that did little to ease Sophia's anxiety as she led her daughters inside. "You must be the Rodriguez family," a warm-voiced teacher greeted them. "I'm Ms. Patel. We're so excited to have triplets joining us." The girls, usually outgoing at the library and park, clung momentarily to Sophia's legs before curiosity overcame their hesitation. A reading corner with colorful books proved irresistible, and soon they were exploring with tentative excitement. "They'll be fine," Ms. Patel assured Sophia, who lingered by the door. "The first day is always harder on parents than children." With a final wave, Sophia departed, the unfamiliar silence surrounding her both liberating and disorienting. For the first time in over 3 years, she had 6 uninterrupted hours to focus solely on work, a luxury that felt almost decadent. She spent the morning at the local coffee shop, powering through client projects with an efficiency that surprised even her. Without constant interruptions to wipe noses, referee disputes, or answer endless why questions, her productivity nearly doubled. By pickup time, she had completed work that would normally have taken 2 days. The reunion with her daughters brought enthusiastic hugs and a torrent of overlapping stories about their day. Their excitement continued through dinner, bath time, and story time until exhaustion finally claimed them. Only then did Sophia notice the folded note in Emma's backpack. "Ms. Rodriguez," it read. "Could you please come 15 minutes early tomorrow for a brief meeting with the director? Thank you, Ms. Patel." Anxiety clutched at Sophia's throat. Had something gone wrong? Had the girls misbehaved? Had she forgotten some crucial paperwork? The questions plagued her until morning when she arrived at the school precisely 15 minutes before the regular drop-off time. The director, Dr. Winters, welcomed her into a small office decorated with children's artwork. "Thank you for coming early, Ms. Rodriguez. Please sit down." "Is everything all right?" Sophia asked, perching on the edge of a chair. "Did something happen yesterday?" Dr. Winters smiled reassuringly. "Everything is more than all right. That's why I wanted to speak with you. She opened a folder on her desk. Your daughters completed our standard developmental assessments yesterday, and the results are remarkable. She turned the folder so Sophia could see 3 nearly identical assessment forms, each marked with scores far above the expected range for 3-year-olds. Your daughters have capacities we rarely see. They're already reading at a 3rd grade level, their numerical understanding is advanced, and their social-emotional development is equally impressive. Simply put, they're extraordinarily gifted. Pride swelled in Sophia's chest, temporarily displacing her anxiety. They love books. We go to the library almost every day, and they're like sponges with information. What you've accomplished with them is exceptional, especially as a single parent, Dr. Winters continued. We'd like to suggest a more challenging curriculum for them, perhaps even consideration of skipping a grade when they enter elementary school. The conversation shifted to educational options, enrichment activities, and potential scholarships for gifted programs. By the time Sophia left the office to drop off her daughters, her mind was spinning with possibilities she'd never considered. That evening, after the triplets were asleep, Sophia sat at her small desk, researching educational approaches for gifted children. The recommended resources, private tutoring, specialized camps, advanced materials, all shared one common feature: they were expensive. Her growing business provided stability, but not the kind of surplus these opportunities would require. Her phone chimed with an email notification, temporarily diverting her attention from educational concerns. The message from her largest client was brief and unexpected. Due to company restructuring, we'll be bringing all web design in-house effective immediately. Thank you for your services to date. Sophia stared at the screen, calculating rapidly. This client represented nearly 30% of her monthly income. The loss would mean immediate cutbacks, perhaps moving to a smaller apartment, definitely canceling the girls' upcoming swimming lessons, possibly even returning to the food assistance program she'd proudly left 6 months earlier. Sleep eluded her that night as she wrestled with this setback, revising budgets and brainstorming new client acquisition strategies. By morning, she had formulated a plan to contact 15 potential new clients by week's end, but the anxiety remained. Her daughters deserved better than this constant financial precarity. 2 months later, with the immediate crisis managed through ruthless budgeting and 3 new smaller clients, Sophia received news that would alter their trajectory. Her parents called from Phoenix with an unexpected proposal. They had scraped together enough airline miles for 4 tickets to visit them in Mexico, where they were staying with family for 3 months. The girls should know their heritage, their extended family, her mother insisted. And you need a break, mija. The trip would mean postponing client work, dipping into their modest emergency fund, and disrupting the girls' preschool routine. Yet something about the opportunity felt significant beyond the obvious family connection. In early June, Sophia and the triplets boarded a flight to Mexico City, then traveled by bus to the small rural community where her extended family lived. The girls, now comfortable with both Spanish and English, adapted quickly to the warmth of cousins, aunts, and uncles who embraced them despite never having met them before. They have his eyes, Sophia's grandmother observed quietly on their 3rd day, the first direct reference any family member had made to Mark. But they have your spirit, gracias a Dios. The rural community, while rich in family connections and cultural heritage, struggled with infrastructure challenges unfamiliar to the girls. Running water operated on a strict schedule, available only 3 hours each morning. Electricity fluctuated with predictable brownouts during peak usage times. "Why is the water gone?" Ava asked on their 4th morning, staring at the dry faucet with confusion. Sophia explained the water rationing system, watching comprehension dawn on her daughters' faces, their first real understanding of resource scarcity. 2 weeks into their visit, Sophia accompanied her uncle to a neighboring village where a prolonged drought had created a water crisis. Women and children walked miles carrying containers to a central distribution point where government trucks delivered potable water weekly. This happens every year now, her uncle explained as they observed the long line. The climate changes, the wells dry up earlier, and the government response is always too little, too late. The contrast struck Sophia forcefully. Just 20 miles away, at a tourist resort visible on the hillside, sprinklers maintained lush golf courses and infinity pools sparkled in the sunlight. The inequity was neither subtle nor complicated. It was simply accepted as the natural order. That night, while the triplets slept deeply in the unfamiliar but comforting embrace of family, Sophia sat outside under the stars, her laptop open to research pages about water filtration systems. What had begun as idle curiosity transformed into focused investigation as she discovered the complex interplay of technology, economics, and access that determined who had clean water and who did not. By the time they returned to New York 2 weeks later, Sophia had filled a notebook with ideas, sketches, and questions about water purification technology. The business pivot wasn't immediately obvious. She remained a web designer by trade and training, but the seed had been planted. Over the following months, as the triplets thrived in their preschool program, Sophia devoted every spare moment to learning about water filtration. Without engineering credentials, she relied on free online courses, library books, and increasingly, direct outreach to experts willing to answer questions from an earnest self-learner. The first prototype materialized on their kitchen table, a crude arrangement of readily available materials assembled according to principles Sophia had absorbed from dozens of research papers and tutorials. The triplets, now approaching 5 years old, watched with fascination as she tested different configurations. "What are you making, Mama?" Olivia asked, standing on tiptoe to peer at the contraption. "A machine to clean dirty water," Sophia explained, adjusting a filter component. "In Mexico, remember how Tia Maria had to walk far for clean water? I'm trying to make something that could help people like her." The first attempt failed spectacularly, producing water that looked cleaner but failed basic safety tests Sophia had purchased online. Frustration threatened to derail the project until an unexpected connection emerged through a web design client, a retired engineering professor who had worked on water systems in developing countries. "Your approach has merit," Professor Chen told her during their first video call after reviewing photos of her prototype. "But you're missing some fundamental principles of filtration sequencing." With his guidance, Sophia refined her design, learning through trial and error, each failure teaching valuable lessons. The triplets became unofficial lab assistants, their natural curiosity and surprising dexterity making them helpful partners in the experimental process. "Try this one, Mama," Emma suggested one evening, rearranging filter elements in a configuration Sophia hadn't considered. To everyone's surprise, it improved flow rate significantly. 10 iterations later, with Professor Chen's continued mentorship, Sophia's kitchen table prototype successfully transformed visibly contaminated water into a product that passed home safety tests. The device used readily available materials, required no electricity, and could be assembled with basic tools, all critical factors for implementation in resource-limited settings. "You should enter this in the MIT Water Innovation Prize," Professor Chen suggested during their weekly video consultation. "The deadline is next month." Sophia hesitated, reviewing the competition requirements on her laptop. "It says most entries come from research universities or established startups. I don't have any formal qualifications." "You have a working prototype that costs 1/3 of comparable solutions," he countered. "That speaks louder than credentials." The application process tested Sophia's resolve. Each form field requesting institutional affiliations or academic credentials reminded her of her outsider status. The section titled Team Composition particularly stung. Her team consisted of herself, 3 preschoolers, and a retired professor volunteering his time. At 3 in the morning, with the submission deadline hours away, Sophia nearly abandoned the application. What place did a self-taught web designer have in a prestigious MIT competition? The cursor hovered over the cancel button as doubt crept in. Then her gaze fell on a family photo taped to her desk, the triplets on their first day of preschool, their matching outfits and confident smiles evidence of how far they'd come from those desperate early days. Mark's words echoed in her memory. An immigrant without a Harvard degree will never be sufficient. With renewed determination, she completed the application, listing herself as lead developer and Professor Chen as technical advisor. In the project description, she emphasized the practical applications and cost advantages rather than technical sophistication, playing to her prototype's strengths. 2 weeks later, the email arrived. Congratulations! Your project Access Water has been selected as a finalist in the MIT Water Innovation Prize competition. Please prepare a 10-minute presentation for the judging panel on April 15th. The MIT campus intimidated Sophia with its imposing architecture and evident prestige. Dressed in her most professional outfit, a navy blue suit purchased specifically for this presentation, she navigated the unfamiliar hallways with the triplets' school photos tucked in her pocket as a talisman. The judging panel, comprised of professors, industry leaders, and previous winners, watched with expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity as Sophia introduced herself. "I am Sophia Rodriguez, a self-taught developer," she began, noticing the raised eyebrows at her lack of titles or affiliations. Access Water was born from direct observation of water scarcity in rural Mexican communities. As she demonstrated the prototype, explaining each component and its function, the initially reserved audience leaned forward with increasing interest. When she revealed the production cost, 1/3 of current market alternatives, the room's energy shifted perceptibly. "Your filtration sequence is unconventional," noted one judge during the question period, his tone suggesting this wasn't necessarily a compliment. "Conventional approaches are optimized for large-scale municipal systems," Sophia responded confidently. "Access Water is designed specifically for household use in resource-limited settings where conventional solutions are neither affordable nor practical." After all presentations concluded, finalists gathered in an atrium to await results. Surrounded by teams from prestigious universities and established startups, Sophia felt acutely out of place, yet strangely calm. Regardless of the outcome, she had proven something essential to herself. When the announcement came, first place and a grant of $100,000 goes to Access Water by Sophia Rodriguez, the room momentarily blurred around her. The judge's explanation barely registered. "For combining technical innovation with practical affordability in addressing one of our most pressing global challenges." On stage, accepting the ceremonial check, Sophia caught sight of the triplets in the audience's front row. Luisa had brought them as a surprise, their eyes wide with excitement as they watched their mother receive a standing ovation from MIT's elite. While holding the check that represented her first significant investment, Sophia couldn't predict that in less than a decade she would be declining 9-figure acquisition offers, including one from the company where Mark now struggled to maintain his relevance. The check from MIT felt surreal in Sophia's hands as she stood on the auditorium stage, the weight of the oversized cardboard seeming to represent more than just money. It was validation, a turning point, the first significant investment in her vision. As the audience applauded, her eyes remained fixed on her daughters in the front row, their identical faces beaming with pride, even if they couldn't fully comprehend the magnitude of the moment. "Mama won!" Emma announced loudly enough for nearby attendees to hear, causing ripples of appreciative laughter. 2 years later, that pivotal moment had transformed into tangible reality. The modest office space of SR Innovation occupied the 3rd floor of a renovated warehouse in Queens, a significant upgrade from Sophia's kitchen table. Morning sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the whiteboard where Sophia stood explaining filter design modifications to her small but dedicated team of 5 employees. "The municipal testing results came back positive," she announced, tapping the report on the conference table. "Our residential filter exceeded water quality standards by 22% while maintaining the cost advantage." The team, 2 engineers Sophia had hired with the MIT prize money, a marketing specialist who'd taken equity in lieu of full salary, and 2 recent engineering graduates from City College broke into spontaneous applause. "When can we start production?" asked Darius, the lead engineer who'd initially been skeptical about working for a self-taught inventor but had quickly become her most vocal advocate. "I'm meeting with manufacturing partners next week," Sophia replied, checking her watch. "But now I have to pick up the girls from school. We'll continue tomorrow." Outside, spring had transformed New York, cherry blossoms dotting the streets with splashes of pink. Sophia's second-hand Prius, a practical purchase that had replaced her reliance on public transportation, hummed quietly as she navigated toward the Gifted Children Academy, where the triplets now attended second grade on partial scholarships. At 8 years old, Olivia, Emma, and Ava had blossomed into extraordinarily capable children. Their identical appearances, the same dark hair and startling blue eyes that unmistakably recalled their absent father, belied their increasingly distinct personalities and talents. The school principal, Dr. Lowell, intercepted Sophia in the hallway before she reached the classroom. "Ms. Rodriguez, do you have a moment?" Sophia's heart rate accelerated. These unplanned conversations with administrators still triggered her parental anxiety reflex. "Of course," she answered, following him into his office. "Nothing concerning," Dr. Lowell assured her, noting her expression. "Quite the opposite. I wanted to discuss the girls' language acquisition progress. Their Mandarin instructor tells me they've advanced beyond the third-year curriculum in just 8 months." Sophia smiled, remembering the beginning of this particular journey. 6 months earlier, the triplets had announced at dinner that they wanted to learn Mandarin after discovering that China manufactured most of the components in the devices they used daily. "We should understand the language if we're going to work with Chinese suppliers someday," Olivia had explained with the matter-of-fact logic that characterized her approach to the world. Rather than enrolling them in expensive language classes, Sophia had found free online resources, scheduling 30 minutes of language practice every evening. Within weeks, the girls were teaching each other, competing to master pronunciation and characters with the playful intensity they brought to all intellectual challenges. "They're teaching themselves, honestly," Sophia admitted to Dr. Lowell. "I just provide the resources." "That's precisely what makes them extraordinary," he replied. "They have an intrinsic drive that can't be taught. They've been helping the other students during Mandarin class, essentially peer teaching." As they continued discussing educational options, Sophia's phone vibrated with an email notification from a venture capital firm she'd pitched the previous month. She resisted the urge to check it immediately, focusing on the principal's recommendations for advanced placement testing. Later that evening, with the triplets absorbed in their homework at the kitchen table of their modest but comfortable apartment, Sophia finally opened the email. "We're pleased to offer SR Innovation an initial investment of $1 million, it began, outlining terms that valued her company at $5 million, a figure that made her breath catch. "Mama, your face looks funny," observed Ava, the most perceptive of the three. "Is something wrong?" Sophia blinked back unexpected tears. "No, mi amor. Something is very, very right." She turned the screen to show them. "Remember how I explained what investors are? Well, some very smart people want to invest in our company." "Our company?" Emma repeated, eyes widening. "Yes, ours. Everything I build is for us, for our future." That night, after the girls were asleep, Sophia sat on her balcony overlooking the quiet street, allowing herself a rare moment of reflection. The journey from desperate single mother to founder of a promising startup had been neither straight nor easy. For every milestone, the MIT prize, the first successful prototype, this investment offer, there had been countless setbacks, rejections, and moments of doubt. Yet here she was, on the verge of securing capital that would allow SR Innovation to scale beyond her wildest dreams. The venture capital offer would enable mass production of her residential filters and accelerate development of larger community-scale systems. The following week brought a whirlwind of activity: meetings with lawyers to review investment terms, interviews with potential new team members, and planning sessions for expanded manufacturing. Through it all, Sophia maintained her unwavering commitment to the triplets' routine, ensuring she was present for dinner each night and bedtime stories, no matter how many emails awaited her response. "How do you balance it all?" asked Janelle, the newly hired operations manager, after witnessing Sophia transition seamlessly from a technical production meeting to a video call with the girls' teacher. "I don't see it as balance," Sophia replied thoughtfully. "It's integration. My daughters aren't separate from my work. They're the reason for it." As summer approached, Sophia faced a significant decision. The investors strongly recommended relocating the company to San Francisco, where access to talent, additional capital, and strategic partnerships would accelerate growth. The prospect of uprooting the triplets from their school and support network gave Sophia pause, but the opportunities were undeniable. "What do you think about moving to California?" she asked the girls one Sunday morning over pancakes, her tone casual despite the weight of the question. "Would we live near the ocean?" Emma asked immediately. "Would my Mandarin teacher, Mrs. Lin, come too?" worried Ava. "Would the new house have a laboratory?" Olivia inquired practically. Their questions, practical, emotional, aspirational, reflected their distinct approaches to change. After an hour of family discussion, complete with pro-con lists that Olivia insisted on documenting, they reached a consensus. California represented opportunity, and Rodriguez's embraced opportunity. By fall, SR Innovation had established temporary offices in a San Francisco co-working space while Sophia worked with architects to design their permanent headquarters. The triplets had transferred to a progressive private school that offered full scholarships after being impressed by their academic records and multilingual abilities. The new building would embody SR Innovation's values: sustainability, accessibility, innovation. Sophia insisted on solar panels, rainwater collection systems, and vertical gardens that would make the structure not just environmentally responsible, but a living demonstration of the company's ethos. "The building should tell our story," she explained to the architectural team. "It should reflect both cutting-edge technology and elements of my Mexican heritage." The resulting design incorporated a central courtyard reminiscent of traditional Mexican homes, drought-resistant native plants, and state-of-the-art water recycling systems that would reduce consumption by 60% compared to similar-sized buildings. As the company expanded, Sophia maintained her focus on creating affordable water solutions. When a competitor suggested targeting luxury markets with premium-priced versions of their technology, she firmly declined. "Our mission is to make clean water accessible to those who need it most," she reminded her growing executive team. "Premium markets may offer higher margins, but they don't align with why we exist." This clarity of purpose attracted like-minded talent. By early 2016, SR Innovation had grown to 28 employees, engineers, designers, marketing specialists, and sustainability experts drawn by both the technology and the mission. The triplets, now in third grade at their new school, thrived in the stimulating environment of San Francisco. Their language skills expanded to include conversational Mandarin alongside their native English and Spanish. Each had begun to display distinct academic preferences: Olivia gravitating toward mathematics and structural engineering, Emma showing remarkable facility with languages and communication, and Ava developing an intense interest in biological sciences. They're academically at least 3 years ahead of grade level in most subjects. Their new principal informed Sophia during a parent-teacher conference. "We're developing individualized education plans to keep them engaged." The meeting reminded Sophia of her own limited educational opportunities: the community college courses interrupted by pregnancy, the self-teaching necessitated by circumstance. Looking at the advanced curricula planned for her daughters, she felt a surge of pride mingled with determination. They would have every advantage she could provide. That evening, Sophia met with her financial advisor to establish substantial trust funds for each daughter, funded by her growing equity in SR Innovation. The paperwork was complex, but the purpose was simple. Her children would never face the financial insecurity that had defined her early motherhood. "These are generous provisions," noted the advisor, reviewing the structures. "With these trusts, they'll have resources for education, housing, even seed capital for their own ventures someday. They should never have to choose between food and textbooks," Sophia replied, signing the documents, "or worry about medical bills or housing security." As 2017 transitioned to 2018, SR Innovation attracted increasing attention from both industry and media. Sophia's unique background, immigrant, single mother, self-taught inventor, combined with the company's measurable impact made for compelling profiles in business publications. The first major feature came from a regional business journal. From kitchen table to cutting edge, how Sofia Rodriguez is changing water access. More significant coverage followed, culminating in an unexpected email from Forbes requesting an interview for their Innovators to Watch section. The photo shoot took place at the construction site of SR Innovation's new headquarters, with Sophia and the triplets standing before the partially completed structure. The girls, now 10 and remarkably poised, answered the photographer's casual questions with articulate responses that left him visibly impressed. "Your daughters are extraordinarily well-spoken," the journalist commented as Sophia reviewed the interview transcript. "They've been in board meetings since they could sit up," Sophia replied with a smile. "They understand our business better than some investors." The resulting Forbes profile, "The Water Visionary Building a Legacy," highlighted both SR Innovation's technological innovations and Sophia's journey from struggling single mother to successful entrepreneur. The online version quickly became one of the publication's most shared articles of the month. With increased visibility came invitations to high-profile events. Sophia carefully selected those aligned with her mission, declining purely social engagements that would take time away from either the company or her daughters. When she did attend functions, she often brought the triplets, who had developed remarkable social confidence and conversational abilities that belied their age. The most significant invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning in late May. The World Economic Forum is pleased to invite Sofia Rodriguez to speak on the panel "Innovation for Global Water Security" at our upcoming special session in Davos, Switzerland. Sophia stared at the email in disbelief. The World Economic Forum represented the pinnacle of global influence, a gathering of leaders from business, government, and civil society who shaped worldwide policy and economic direction. Ms. Rodriguez, her assistant, interrupted gently. "The girls' school just called. They want to discuss the science fair projects. Apparently, the triplets have proposed something involving water purification at an advanced level that's causing some confusion among the faculty." Sophia laughed, the tension of the momentous email breaking. "Tell them I'll call back in an hour. And Jennifer? Book 4 tickets to Davos for the forum dates. The girls are coming with me." In the weeks leading up to the forum, Sophia prepared meticulously for her panel presentation, practicing with the triplets as her critical audience. "Mama, you need to explain the social impact more clearly in the third section," Emma suggested during one rehearsal. "Use specific examples from Mexico." "And the economic benefits need more concrete numbers," added Olivia, always focused on quantifiable results. Their arrival in Davos created a minor sensation. The striking entrepreneur and her 3 identical daughters, all dressed in coordinated outfits that blended professional polish with their age-appropriate style. Sophia had deliberately chosen clothing that incorporated subtle elements of Mexican design, honoring her heritage on this global stage. The moment before taking the stage for her panel, Sophia experienced a flash of imposter syndrome, a momentary return of the insecurity that had plagued her early days. Looking out at the audience of world leaders and influential figures, she briefly wondered if she belonged. Then she spotted her daughters in the front row, their expressions conveying absolute confidence in her abilities, and the doubt vanished. Her presentation, powerful, passionate, and precisely articulated, earned the panel's only standing ovation. "Your perspective on accessible innovation is refreshing," commented the CEO of a major European utility during the reception afterward. "Most technological discussions here focus on profit potential first, impact second. In my experience, meaningful impact creates sustainable profit," Sophia replied. "Short-term profit without impact is ultimately a failed investment." As potential partners and investors approached her throughout the evening, Sophia made sure to include her daughters in conversations when appropriate, proudly watching them engage with global leaders with poise beyond their years. On the plane ride home across the Atlantic, while her daughters slept and she reviewed partnership proposals from international organizations, Sophia couldn't imagine that her next major achievement would come during a global pandemic that would test companies worldwide and catapult SR innovation to an entirely new level. The private jet banked gently over the Atlantic seaboard, the coastline coming into view as Sophia closed the folder containing partnership proposals from 3 different international development agencies. Each offered significant resources to expand SR Innovation's reach into regions struggling with water security. The negotiations at Davos had exceeded her expectations, opening doors that once seemed permanently closed to someone with her background. In the cabin, the triplets slept peacefully, exhausted from the intellectual stimulation of the World Economic Forum. At 10 years old, they had held their own in conversations with CEOs and heads of state, impressing even the most hardened executives with their articulate insights and multilingual abilities. Sophia studied their faces, still identical yet increasingly distinct in expression, even in sleep. Emma's slight smile suggested pleasant dreams, while Olivia's furrowed brow hinted at problem-solving continuing even in slumber. Ava's peaceful countenance reflected her naturally contemplative nature. As the plane began its descent into San Francisco, Sophia's phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line caused her breath to catch: SR Innovation, Formal Investment Offer. The message was from Horizon Ventures, a prestigious venture capital firm that had been courting SR Innovation for months. The terms outlined a $5 million investment at a valuation that exceeded Sophia's most optimistic projections. This wasn't merely capital, it was validation on a scale she had barely dared to imagine when working at her kitchen table just a few years earlier. "Ladies, we're beginning our descent into San Francisco. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts," the pilot announced, gently waking the triplets. "Are we home, Mama?" Ava asked, blinking away sleep. "Almost," Sophia smiled, tucking away her phone. The news could wait until they were settled. "And I think we have something to celebrate tonight." 2 months later, Sophia stood in the cavernous space that would become SR Innovation's permanent headquarters, surrounded by construction workers, architects, and her expanding executive team. The investment from Horizon Ventures had accelerated their timeline dramatically, allowing them to purchase rather than lease their facility, a former manufacturing building in an up-and-coming area of San Francisco. "The solar panel installation begins next week," the sustainability director explained, pointing to the expansive roof. "With the rainwater catchment system, we'll be able to demonstrate our commitment to conservation right in our own building." "And the testing laboratory?" Sophia asked, consulting the blueprints spread across a makeshift table. "East Wing, as requested, state-of-the-art equipment with space for future expansion." As the team discussed technical specifications, Sophia's mind drifted momentarily to the triplets, who were spending the day at a special mathematics enrichment program. At 10 years old, their distinct intellectual strengths had become increasingly apparent. Olivia's mathematical abilities had recently been assessed at a high school level. Emma had begun tutoring adult language learners in Spanish and was progressing rapidly in Mandarin, and Ava had developed a passionate interest in biological sciences, particularly waterborne disease prevention. "Ms. Rodriguez," her assistant interrupted gently, "your 3 o'clock with the attorney is waiting in the temporary office." The meeting with the estate planning attorney had been on Sophia's calendar for weeks, a necessary step as SR Innovation's value increased and her personal financial situation evolved from survival to security. "I'd like to establish 3 separate trust funds," Sophia explained once they were seated in the makeshift conference room, "equal amounts for each daughter, structured to provide for education, healthcare, housing, and eventually seed capital for their own ventures." The attorney nodded, making notes. Given the growth trajectory of SR Innovation, these could become substantial assets. "Have you considered the stipulations for distribution?" Sophia had indeed thought carefully about this. Access to education funds immediately, healthcare funds as needed, housing at 21, the remainder at 25, with provisions for earlier access if they present viable business plans. As they discussed the technical details, Sophia reflected on the symmetry of this moment. 5 years earlier, she had been filling out assistance forms to keep her daughters fed. Now, she was establishing financial security that would ensure they never experienced the desperation she had known. "I want to make one thing very clear," Sophia added as they reviewed the final structure. "These funds are to provide security and opportunity, not entitlement. I want my daughters to understand that while they have resources that I never had, they still have responsibility to contribute meaningfully to the world." By fall of 2018, the new SR Innovation headquarters was nearing completion. The building had become something of a local landmark, its distinctive design incorporating sustainable elements with aesthetic touches that reflected Sophia's Mexican heritage. Vertical gardens adorned the southern facade, while the rainwater catchment system fed decorative channels inspired by ancient Mayan water management techniques. Inside, the heart of the building was a central courtyard reminiscent of traditional Mexican architecture, creating a gathering space that encouraged collaboration while demonstrating water conservation principles in its landscaping. The laboratories, manufacturing spaces, and offices radiated from this center, physically embodying Sophia's philosophy that community and innovation were inseparable. The triplets had been intimately involved in the building's development, each contributing ideas that reflected their growing interests. Olivia had suggested mathematical patterns for the decorative screens that provided shade and privacy to certain areas. Emma had composed the bilingual signage that guided visitors through the space. Ava had selected the plant species for the vertical gardens, prioritizing those with natural water purification properties. As the company expanded, so did its profile. Industry publications began featuring SR Innovation's approach to affordable water technology, highlighting both the technical innovations and Sophia's unusual path to entrepreneurship. When Fast Company included her in their Most Creative People in Business list, the accompanying interview focused not just on her technology, but on her journey from single motherhood to successful CEO. "Many see your story as the quintessential American dream," the interviewer noted. "Do you view it that way?" Sophia considered the question carefully. "I see it as evidence that talent and determination exist everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. My work isn't just about creating water technology, it's about creating systems where more people with talent and determination can access the resources they need to solve important problems." The article, published with a striking photo of Sophia and the triplets standing proudly before their nearly completed headquarters, generated unexpected attention. Invitations to speak at conferences multiplied. Universities requested guest lectures. Corporate boards expressed interest in her perspective. Sophia maintained a disciplined approach to these opportunities, accepting only those that aligned with SR Innovation's mission or provided significant strategic advantages. She also insisted on family-friendly scheduling, refusing evening events that would take her away from dinner with the triplets, a sacred time she had protected since their infancy. The most meaningful recognition came not from prestigious institutions but from communities impacted by SR Innovation's technology. When a small town in Mexico installed their community filtration system, providing clean water to 2,000 residents for the first time in decades, they invited Sophia to the inauguration ceremony. Standing before the gathered community, many of whom reminded her of her own extended family, Sophia felt a profound connection between her past and present. She had brought the triplets along, wanting them to understand the real-world impact of their mother's work and their own heritage. "Water is life," she told the assembled crowd in fluent Spanish, "and every community deserves access to clean, safe water regardless of their economic status or geographic location." The local mayor presented her with a handcrafted ceramic vessel, a traditional water carrier decorated with symbols of gratitude. "You have not forgotten where you come from," he said, his weathered hands holding the gift. "And so, you understand what we truly need." That evening, at a celebration dinner hosted by the community, Sophia watched her daughters converse easily with local children in Spanish, bridging cultural and economic divides with the natural diplomacy of their age. They had absorbed her values along with her determination, developing a worldview that recognized both privilege and responsibility. "I'm proud of you three," she told them later in their hotel room. "You represented our family beautifully today." "It feels different here," observed Emma thoughtfully. "Not just the language or the food, but how people connect." "That's part of your heritage," Sophia explained. "The community values, the interconnectedness. I want you to carry that with you, even as you move through spaces very different from this." Upon their return to San Francisco, Sophia received an unexpected call from a prestigious public relations firm that specialized in executive profiles. "Forbes is preparing their annual list of America's most innovative leaders," the representative explained. "Your name has been submitted for consideration, and they're interested in featuring SR innovation in a more in-depth piece." The resulting article, "The Water Visionary Transforming an Industry," placed Sophia on the national stage in a new way. The full-page photograph captured her standing confidently in the SR Innovation Laboratory, surrounded by prototypes and testing equipment, dressed in a simple but elegant outfit that subtly incorporated traditional Mexican embroidery patterns. The profile detailed her journey from abandoned pregnant barista to CEO of a rapidly growing company valued at over $60 million. It highlighted not just her technical innovations but her management philosophy and commitment to addressing global water security as both a humanitarian and business imperative. What the article didn't mention, because Sophia never discussed it publicly, was the father of her children. The omission was deliberate on her part. Her story was about creation and growth, not abandonment. The triplets, now old enough to understand the basics of their origin, knew only that their biological father had chosen not to be part of their lives. Sophia had always emphasized that this reflected his limitations, not theirs. The day after the Forbes issue hit newsstands, Sophia was reviewing manufacturing specifications in her office when her assistant interrupted with an unusual request. "There's a call from the president's office at Stanford University," she announced. "They're interested in having you speak at their engineering department's annual symposium." This invitation marked a particular milestone, recognition from the elite academic world that had once seemed inaccessible to a community college dropout. Sophia accepted immediately, scheduling the talk for the following month. The Stanford campus, with its Spanish-influenced architecture and palm-lined pathways, impressed even the well-traveled triplets, who accompanied Sophia to the event. Before her presentation, the university president gave them a personal tour of the engineering facilities, paying special attention to the water research laboratory. "Your mother is revolutionizing how we approach water purification technology," he told the girls. "Her work combines technical innovation with practical application in a way that's quite rare in academia." Olivia, always the most technically minded, asked detailed questions about the research equipment. Emma engaged the graduate students in conversation about their international implementation experiences. Ava focused on the biological testing protocols, particularly those related to pathogen identification. The president observed their interactions with growing interest. "They're quite remarkable," he commented to Sophia. "Academically advanced, certainly, but also socially poised and genuinely curious." "They've had unusual educational experiences," Sophia acknowledged. "Their classroom has often been my laboratory or boardroom." Have you considered their future education path? Stanford has some excellent programs for exceptionally gifted students. The question caught Sophia off guard. The triplets were only 10. College seemed distant, yet their accelerated development meant traditional educational timelines might not apply. "We're exploring options," she replied diplomatically. That evening, as they flew back to San Francisco on a commercial flight, Sophia reserved the private jet for international business travel only. She pondered the president's implied interest. Elite universities like Stanford represented the kind of opportunity she had never had, the doors that had remained closed to her despite her intellect and drive. "Did you like Stanford?" she asked the girls casually. "Their laboratories are impressive," Olivia noted. "The international programs sound fascinating," Emma added. "I liked their bioengineering department," Ava contributed. Sophia made a mental note to research advanced placement options and university preparation paths. Her daughters would have every opportunity to access the education that circumstances had denied her. On the plane ride home from Stanford, while the triplets chatted excitedly about university possibilities and Sophia reviewed architectural plans for the final phase of their headquarters, she couldn't imagine that in less than 2 years, SR Innovation would surpass the billion-dollar valuation mark, transforming her officially into a billionaire and her daughters into heiresses of an empire built from nothing. The San Francisco skyline shimmered against the early morning fog as Sophia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of SR Innovation's executive suite. The view from the 20th floor offered a panoramic vista of the city she now called home, so different from the cramped Bronx apartment where she had once rocked 3 infants while calculating how to stretch her last $20. The ping of an incoming video call pulled her attention back to her desk, where her chief operations officer waited with the quarterly projections. These days, Sophia ran meetings virtually even when in the office, a practice that maximized efficiency and allowed her to maintain her commitment to be home for dinner with the triplets regardless of her schedule. "The pandemic response team is ready whenever you are," her assistant announced through the intercom. Sophia straightened her blazer, a subtle navy Armani that reflected her evolved style, professional yet understated. At 38, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had built something substantial against impossible odds. "Let's begin," she said, taking her seat at the head of the virtual table. Faces appeared on her screen. Department heads, logistics specialists, engineers, all gathered to address the unfolding global crisis. COVID-19 had emerged with devastating swiftness, shuttering businesses and overwhelming healthcare systems worldwide. "We have 2 priorities," Sophia began, her voice steady. "First, protecting our team and their families. Second, determining how our technology can help address this crisis. Mira, start with operations." The presentations unfolded with military precision: remote work transitions, supply chain contingencies, financial projections showing significant disruption. Yet unlike many companies facing existential threats, SR Innovation's leadership team displayed measured concern rather than panic. "Now, opportunities," Sophia prompted when the challenges had been thoroughly assessed. "How can our water purification technology serve in this moment?" The engineering director cleared his throat. "Hospitals are reporting critical shortages of purified water for medical applications. Their existing systems aren't designed for the current patient volumes." A solution crystallized in Sophia's mind with remarkable clarity. "We can adapt our commercial purifiers for medical settings, higher throughput, additional filtration for specific contaminants." Her fingers flew across her keyboard, sketching a modified design. Something compact, portable, that can be installed as a supplementary system within days, not months. "Manufacturing would require keeping some facilities open," the operations director cautioned. "There's health risk to consider." "Voluntary teams, additional compensation, maximum safety protocols," Sophia countered. "If we can provide safe water to hospitals, we save lives beyond just COVID patients." The meeting stretched to 3 hours, the team working through logistics, regulatory fast-tracking, and deployment strategies. By its conclusion, SR Innovation had pivoted from residential and community water systems to emergency medical purification units. "Execute this plan and report back tomorrow," Sophia instructed, closing the meeting. She checked her watch, just enough time to join the triplets for their remote learning lunch break. At home, the girls had transformed the dining room into a sophisticated learning environment. At 12 years old, they approached remote schooling with characteristic determination, already ahead of curriculum despite the educational disruptions. "Mama, did you know virus particles can survive in water systems?" Ava asked immediately, her tablet displaying research she'd been conducting independently. "That's why filtration is so important," Sophia replied, setting down lunch plates. "We're adapting our systems for hospitals starting today." "Smart pivot," Olivia commented, closing her advanced calculus homework. "Healthcare applications have different regulatory paths but higher margins." "And massive social impact," Emma added, always attuned to the human element. "Will you need translators for international deployment? I could help with Spanish documentation." Sophia smiled at their instant comprehension of business implications. They had absorbed complex concepts through osmosis, growing up in conference rooms and laboratories alongside traditional classrooms. The following weeks unfolded with dizzying intensity. While other companies furloughed workers, SR Innovation hired additional engineers and converted manufacturing lines to produce medical-grade purification systems. Sophia worked 18-hour days from her home office, balancing company leadership with supporting the triplets through the strangeness of pandemic isolation. The first breakthrough came when Massachusetts General Hospital reported successful implementation of 20 SR Innovation units, doubling their capacity for critical care procedures requiring purified water. Media coverage followed, first industry publications, then mainstream news highlighting innovative responses to the healthcare crisis. The purification units designed by SR Innovation have been deployed in 400 hospitals nationwide, reported CNN in a segment on pandemic solutions. CEO Sofia Rodriguez has redirected 80% of production capacity to medical applications, providing these units at cost to public hospitals. By summer, what had begun as crisis response had evolved into a significant business opportunity. Healthcare facilities, recognizing the superiority of SR Innovation's systems, began placing orders for permanent installations. International inquiries flooded in from countries struggling with both pandemic response and chronic water quality issues. Third-quarter projections show 340% growth, the CFO reported during a Friday evening meeting. "We've exceeded our annual targets despite the global economic contraction." "And the social impact metrics?" Sophia asked, always balancing profit with purpose. "Our systems are providing clean water access to approximately 2 million patients monthly. The donation program for underserved hospitals has reached 27 countries." That night, after reviewing the latest expansion proposals, Sophia found herself on several leaders to watch during the pandemic lists. Forbes, Business Insider, and Time had all featured her company's rapid pivot and exponential growth while other businesses faltered. She closed her laptop and walked through the quiet house to check on the triplets. Despite the late hour, a light shone under Emma's door. Sophia knocked softly before entering. "Everything okay, mi amor?" she asked, finding her daughter still awake, staring at her tablet. "I was just looking at old photos," Emma replied, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. She turned the screen to show a baby picture of the three of them, tiny bundles with identical expressions. "Mama, do you have any pictures of our father?" The question hung in the air between them. Through unspoken agreement, the subject of their father rarely arose. Sophia had always promised herself she would answer honestly when asked, but had never volunteered information about Mark. "I have a few," she admitted, sitting beside Emma on the bed. "Why do you ask now?" Emma shrugged, attempting nonchalance despite the obvious emotional weight of the question. "The pandemic makes you think about family, I guess. where people come from, who might be worried about you." She looked up, her blue eyes, so like Mark's, searching Sophia's face. "Does he even know about us?" "He knows," Sophia replied carefully. "He knew before you were born." "And he still didn't want us?" Emma's voice carried a hint of the hurt child beneath the composed preteen exterior. The commotion attracted Olivia and Ava, who appeared in the doorway in matching pajamas, instantly sensing the significance of the conversation. They entered without speaking and settled on the bed, completing their quartet as they had countless times before. "I think it's time we talked about this," Sophia acknowledged, looking at each of her daughters. "You're old enough to understand the full story." She began at the beginning, meeting Mark at the catering job, their relationship, the pregnancy announcement, and finally, his cruel dismissal. She didn't soften his words but presented them factually, without embellishment. "You are completely unsuitable for my life," she quoted, the words still sharp despite the years that had dulled other memories. "An immigrant without a Harvard degree will never be sufficient for a man of my caliber. And 3 babies? That's absolutely incompatible with my future." The triplets absorbed this information with solemn expressions, processing the reality of their biological father's rejection. "He gave you $2,000 and left?" Olivia asked, mathematical mind immediately calculating the inadequacy of the sum. "For 3 babies? That barely covers 1 month's rent in New York," Emma added indignantly. Ava, always the most reflective, asked the question that cut deepest. "Does he know who we've become? Who you've become?" "I don't know," Sophia answered honestly. "I haven't had any contact with him since that night. I don't know if he's followed my career or knows anything about our lives." Silence fell as the girls processed this information. Sophia watched emotions flicker across their identical faces: hurt, anger, confusion, and finally, a collective resolving into something like determination. "His loss," Olivia stated flatly, pragmatic as always. "A catastrophic error in judgment," added Emma with the vocabulary that made her English teachers marvel. "A failure of character, not a reflection on us," Ava concluded softly. Sophia felt tears threatening at their resilience, their immediate understanding that the rejection spoke volumes about Mark and nothing about their worth. "You 3 are the most extraordinary people I know," she told them, gathering them close. "And while I would never choose the way he treated us, I wouldn't change a single thing about our family." The conversation continued into the night, the girls asking questions she had long anticipated about his background, his appearance, whether they had inherited anything beyond his blue eyes. Sophia answered everything truthfully, describing Mark's intelligence and ambition without hiding his callousness and materialistic values. "I've always promised myself that when you were ready to know his identity, I would tell you everything," she concluded. "That decision belongs to you, not me." The triplets exchanged glances, communicating in that silent language unique to multiples. "Not yet," Olivia decided, speaking for all 3. "Maybe someday, but not now." "We have everything we need," Emma added with certainty. "And we know who we are," Ava completed the thought. In the weeks that followed, Sophia noticed subtle changes in the girls, a new confidence, as if understanding the full circumstances of their origin had somehow strengthened rather than diminished them. They threw themselves into their projects with renewed purpose, particularly their self-initiated program to provide educational resources to children isolated by the pandemic. By fall, SR Innovation had solidified its position in medical purification systems while maintaining its core mission of accessible clean water technology. The company's valuation soared past previously unimaginable thresholds, and Sophia found herself fielding acquisition offers from multinational corporations seeking to incorporate their innovations. "The latest offer is $85 million, her business development director reported during their weekly strategy meeting, 20% above the previous bid. "Still not interested," Sophia replied without hesitation. "We're not building to sell. We're building to solve problems that matter. December brought an unexpected email from the CEO of Aquatech Global, one of the largest water technology companies in the world. Rather than another acquisition offer, it proposed a strategic partnership to deploy SR innovation systems throughout Southeast Asia, combining their manufacturing scale with Sophia's superior technology. The proposal's terms were exceptionally favorable, offering distribution without requiring ownership transfer, a rare acknowledgement of SR Innovation's strengthened negotiating position. More significantly, the partnership would accelerate their impact in regions with critical water security challenges. Sophia presented the opportunity at dinner, as she did all major business decisions, valuing her daughter's increasingly sophisticated perspectives. This would increase our impact by approximately 300% in the target regions, Olivia noted, scanning the proposal's metrics. The cultural adaptation considerations are solid, Emma approved, reviewing the implementation plans. They've incorporated local leadership at every level. And their sustainability commitments align with ours, Ava added, focusing on the environmental impact assessment. The partnership announcement in January 2021 made headlines in business publications worldwide. SR Innovation partners with Aquatech in landmark Clean Water Initiative. The accompanying profile noted that SR Innovation's valuation had officially crossed the billion-dollar threshold, making Sofia Rodriguez one of the few Latina billionaires in the world. That evening, as she consoled her daughters after revealing the hard truth about their father, Sophia didn't know that soon the SR Innovation would surpass the $1 billion valuation mark, officially transforming her into a billionaire and her daughters into heiresses of an empire built from nothing. The early spring sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of SR Innovation's executive suite as Sophia reviewed the quarterly reports. The numbers were staggering even to someone who had become accustomed to exponential growth. Revenue had increased by 62% compared to the previous quarter, and the company valuation had officially crossed the $1 billion threshold. Sofia Rodriguez, once a desperate pregnant barista abandoned with $2,000, was now officially a billionaire. "Ms. Rodriguez," her assistant's voice came through the intercom, "the Japanese investors have arrived for the purification technology presentation." Sophia smoothed her tailored Prada suit, a rare indulgence she permitted herself for important meetings, and gathered her materials. The conference room on the building's top floor offered a panoramic view of San Francisco Bay, the sweeping vista a subtle reminder of how far she had come. "Gentlemen," she greeted the delegation in flawless, practiced Japanese, bowing precisely. "We're honored by your interest in our water purification technology." The presentation flowed seamlessly as Sophia navigated complex data on large screens. "Our solution reduced water consumption in rural Latin American communities by 78% last year," she explained, her confidence absolute. The silver streaks that now elegantly framed her face, deliberate choices she had stopped coloring at 38, lent gravitas to her appearance, a woman who had earned every bit of her wisdom. The lead investor, Mr. Tanaka, leaned forward with interest. "These efficiency metrics surpass anything currently deployed in Southeast Asia. What's your timeline for scale?" The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours, questions becoming increasingly technical. Sophia addressed each with precision, occasionally deferring to members of her executive team for specialized details. When the final slide appeared, showing SR Innovation's global impact metrics, a murmur of appreciation rippled through the Japanese delegation. "We would like to move forward," Mr. Tanaka announced, earlier reserve giving way to enthusiasm. "The proposed $180 million investment terms are acceptable." As contracts were distributed for preliminary review, Sophia permitted herself a brief moment of reflection. The journey from her early days had been neither linear nor easy. After the triplets' birth, those 18-hour workdays divided between freelance design projects and midnight coding sessions had seemed endless. The memory of nursing 3 infants while participating in video meetings cameras strategically positioned to hide the babies, now seemed like a different lifetime. Her first significant opportunity, the app that unexpectedly gained 50,000 downloads, had been created during stolen moments while the girls napped. The MIT competition that awarded her first substantial funding had required overcoming both explicit and implicit bias against her lack of credentials. Each step had required twice the effort for half the recognition that someone with conventional background might have received. Yet here she stood, closing a 9-figure deal with international investors who now courted her attention and expertise. "Ms. Rodriguez," her assistant interrupted her thoughts. "The girls have arrived from school. They're waiting in conference room 3 to show you their science project results." Sophia immediately brightened. No matter how significant the business achievement, her daughters remained her priority and greatest joy. "Please tell Mr. Tanaka and his team I look forward to dinner this evening. Have Jennifer arrange for the contracts to be delivered to their hotel for review." Walking through the corridor toward conference room 3, Sophia checked emails on her phone. One subject line caught her attention, causing her to pause mid-stride. "Harvard Business School Alumni Association, invitation to receive Entrepreneur of the Year Award." She opened the message, scanning its contents with growing disbelief. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez, the Harvard Business School Alumni Association is pleased to invite you to receive our Entrepreneur of the Year Award during our annual gala in New York at the Plaza Hotel next Friday. Your inspiring journey and revolutionary contributions to sustainable technology exemplify the values our institution cherishes. We look forward to your presence, Jonathan Harrington Association President." Sophia stared at the screen, a complex swirl of emotions rising within her. Harvard, the institution Mark had wielded as a symbol of his superiority, the credential he had used to dismiss her potential, now sought to honor her, despite her never having attended a single class there. The irony was so perfect it almost seemed orchestrated. Her finger hovered over the reply button when excited voices interrupted her thoughts. "Mom!" 3 identical voices called out simultaneously as she entered the conference room. At 15, Olivia, Emma, and Ava Rodriguez were exceptional teenagers by any measure. They had grown tall like the father they had never met, with the same piercing blue eyes, but possessed their mother's unwavering determination and emotional intelligence. The girls were dressed in the uniform of their prestigious private school, but each had personalized their appearance in subtle ways that reflected their distinct personalities. Olivia with a precisely arranged collar, Emma with artfully styled hair, Ava with a delicate pendant symbolizing scientific inquiry. "We won first place at the National Science Fair," Emma announced, holding up a certificate emblazoned with gold seals. "Our microplastics filtration project was selected for the International Symposium," Ava added, her quiet voice carrying the same intensity it had since childhood. "MIT and Stanford have already sent letters expressing interest," Olivia completed, pride evident in her precisely articulated words. Sophia embraced them collectively, feeling that familiar mixture of fierce pride and wistful melancholy that often overtook her during milestones. The girls had never directly asked about their father, following an unspoken agreement that they would discuss him when they felt ready. After the pandemic conversation where she had revealed the circumstances of his abandonment, they had seemed content with knowing the story without seeking his identity. "I have a surprise too," Sophia said, returning to the email she had been reading. "We're going to New York next week. I'm receiving an award at Harvard." The triplets' reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "Harvard!" Olivia exclaimed. "Their engineering department just published that groundbreaking paper on sustainable filtration membranes. Their international development program has connections with water projects in 47 countries," Emma added, always focused on global impact. "Their biomedical research center is doing fascinating work on waterborne disease prevention." Ava completed the trifecta of responses. For them, New York was simply another exciting metropolis to explore, another opportunity to visit prestigious academic institutions and absorb knowledge. For Sophia, it represented a return to the scene of her most devastating abandonment, now as a conqueror rather than a victim. Throughout the week, preparations for the New York trip proceeded efficiently. Sophia's team arranged accommodations at the Four Seasons, scheduled meetings with potential East Coast partners, and coordinated with the Harvard Business School Alumni Association regarding the award ceremony details. The girls approached the trip with characteristic thoroughness, researching museums, laboratories, and educational institutions they wanted to visit during their stay. They compiled detailed itineraries, cross-referencing opening hours with their mother's schedule to maximize their time in the city. "Mom, Columbia University has that special exhibition on water management technologies throughout history," Olivia noted during dinner. "We could visit Thursday morning before your meeting at the UN." Sophia smiled at their enthusiasm. "Make a list of your priorities and we'll fit in as many as possible. This is your spring break after all. It should be enjoyable, not just educational." "Learning is enjoyable," the three responded almost in unison, then laughed at their synchronized thinking, a phenomenon that still occurred despite their increasingly distinct personalities. As Friday approached, Sophia found herself unexpectedly reflective. She had not set foot in New York since leaving with the Triplets when they were 5, deliberately building her empire on the opposite coast. Now, returning as a billionaire honoree with 3 brilliant daughters, the symmetry of the moment was not lost on her. The private jet departed San Francisco early Friday morning. The 4 Rodriguez women settled comfortably as they crossed the country. Sophia reviewed her acceptance speech while the girls engaged in animated conversation about the mathematical modeling exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry they planned to visit the following day. Sophia had chosen her outfit for the evening with deliberate care, a Valentino gown in deep crimson that made a statement without ostentation. The color choice was intentional, a power color that ensured she would command attention in a room full of dark suits. The Triplets would wear coordinated but distinct dresses, their first formal gowns selected with the same excitement that all 15-year-olds brought to such occasions. What Sophia didn't know as their jet began its descent into New York was that among the gala attendees at the Plaza Hotel would be Mark Thompson, now director of a mid-tier investment bank and a member of the Alumni Association's board. Life had been generous to him as well, though not on the same scale as Sophia's meteoric success. Twice divorced and childless, Mark had built a respectable career, though never an extraordinary one. And he also had no idea that the woman he had discarded as unsuitable would be the evening's honoree, or that the 3 teenagers accompanying her carried his DNA and a story he had chosen to ignore. As they settled into their suite at the Four Seasons, Sophia took a moment alone on the balcony, gazing at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere in that grid of gleaming buildings and busy streets was the apartment where Mark had told her she was completely unsuitable for his life. Somewhere below was the coffee shop where she had worked, the tiny apartment she had been evicted from, the benches where she had sometimes rested when the exhaustion of pregnancy overwhelmed her. "Mom?" Ava's voice interrupted her reverie. "Are you okay? You look distant." Sophia turned to her youngest daughter, younger by only minutes but always the most perceptive of the 3. "Just remembering, this city holds many memories for me." "Difficult ones," Ava observed, not asking but stating. "Yes," Sophia acknowledged, "but also the beginning of us. You 3 were born here. Every challenge I faced in this city ultimately led to something beautiful." Later, as Sophia helped the girls prepare for the evening, she found herself studying their features with renewed awareness. Tonight, they would walk into a room filled with Harvard alumni, people from the world their father had used to exclude her. The symmetry was almost too perfect. "You look beautiful, Mom," Emma said as Sophia emerged in her crimson gown, hair elegantly styled to highlight the distinguished silver streaks. "We all do," Sophia replied, taking in the sight of her 3 daughters in their formal attire. "Remember, Tonight is about celebrating achievement, but also about remaining true to our values. Harvard is honoring innovation and impact, not credentials. The limousine arrived precisely on schedule, whisking them through Manhattan traffic toward the Plaza Hotel. As they approached the iconic building, its lights gleaming against the darkening sky, Sophia felt a strange sense of destiny. 15 years earlier, she had walked these streets in desperation, pregnant and abandoned. Tonight, she returned in triumph. "Are you nervous?" Olivia asked as they pulled up to the entrance, where photographers were documenting arriving guests. "No," Sophia replied with perfect honesty. "I've earned my place at this table. We all have." While Sophia and her daughters entered the ballroom of the plaza, she didn't imagine that in less than an hour she would be face to face with the man who had cast her aside as inadequate, now about to witness not only her success, but also the 3 extraordinary young women who carried his DNA and whom he had never known. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered with old money and older prestige. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over New York's financial and academic elite as they navigated between conversations about market forecasts and alma mater reminiscences. In one corner, surrounded by former classmates, Mark Thompson adjusted his custom-tailored Brioni suit jacket with the practiced nonchalance of someone accustomed to belonging. At 47, Mark had aged well, silver streaks at his temples lending him a distinguished appearance that complemented his position as director at Lenox Capital Partners. His career, while not meteoric, had been steady, respectable enough to maintain his seat on various boards, including the Harvard Business School Alumni Association. "Thompson, have you seen who this year's honoree is?" Richard Kensington asked, swirling an 18-year-old scotch. Richard had been Mark's dormitory neighbor during their first year, and their careers had followed parallel trajectories in finance. "Some new technology prodigy, I presume," Mark replied dismissively, adjusting his Hermes tie. These award ceremonies had become predictable, celebrating the latest Stanford dropout or MIT wunderkind who'd created an app that would be forgotten within 5 years. Sofia Rodriguez, the SR Innovation founder. Richard raised his eyebrows meaningfully. "They say she revolutionized water purification technology in emerging markets, company valued at almost $2 billion, and she never even attended Harvard, which makes it all more impressive." Mark froze, the name triggering a cascade of buried memories. Surely it couldn't be the same Sophia. A coincidence of names, nothing more. He'd known a Sofia Rodriguez once, years ago, a pretty barista with ambitious dreams but limited prospects. The woman Richard described couldn't possibly be the same person. "Interesting choice," Mark managed, voice carefully neutral. "What's her background?" Before Richard could answer, a palpable shift in energy swept through the ballroom. The main doors opened, and the official photographer's camera flashed repeatedly. Conversations paused as heads turned toward the entrance. Sofia Rodriguez entered, resplendent in a crimson Valentino gown that contrasted dramatically with the sea of conservative black and navy surrounding her. Her dark hair, now accented with elegant silver streaks, was swept into a sophisticated updo that emphasized her high cheekbones and confident posture. Behind her walked 3 nearly identical teenage girls, each in coordinated but distinct formal dresses, all carrying themselves with the same poised self-assurance as their mother. Mark's breath caught painfully in his chest. Even 15 years later, he would recognize that face anywhere. But the woman gliding confidently through the crowd, greeting CEOs and renowned professors as equals, wasn't the insecure young woman he remembered. This Sophia radiated power and certainty. "The girls with her must be her daughters," Richard commented, oblivious to Mark's shock. "Triplets, from what I read. Academic prodigies, all of them. The middle one published a scientific paper at 14, apparently." Mark gripped his glass tighter, mind racing through calculations. Triplets, 15 years old. The timing aligned with painful precision. As the young women moved closer through the crowd, the evidence became undeniable. Those were his eyes, his jawline, even the characteristic arch of eyebrows he'd inherited from his grandfather. "Mark, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost?" Richard asked, frowning with concern. Before Mark could formulate a response, Jonathan Harrington, the association president, took the stage to begin the formal proceedings. Mark remained frozen in place, unable to tear his gaze from Sophia and the three teenagers who, he now realized with sickening clarity, were his daughters. The opening formalities passed in a blur as Mark struggled to process the revelation unfolding before him. When Sophia was finally introduced and took the stage, the room erupted in enthusiastic applause. She stood at the podium with natural authority, her voice clear and melodious as she addressed the gathering of Harvard's elite. "Innovation doesn't emerge from comfort," she began, her slight accent adding character rather than detracting from her authority. "It's born from necessity, from identifying problems that others have normalized or ignored." Mark watched, transfixed, as she outlined SR Innovation's journey from a kitchen table prototype to a global leader in water purification technology. She spoke of creating systems that served communities traditionally overlooked by profit-driven corporations, of building technology that addressed real human needs rather than manufactured desires. "Many ask what my greatest challenge was as an entrepreneur," Sophia said, her gaze sweeping the room. For a moment, Mark was certain her eyes found his, but she continued without pause. "I always answer that it was believing in my worth when those who should have been my greatest supporters chose to doubt." The words struck Mark like physical blows. Had she seen him? Did she know he was here? Was this entire speech crafted as an indictment? When Sophia concluded to a standing ovation, Mark remained seated, legs suddenly unreliable. As she returned to her table, surrounded by admirers and well-wishers, he watched the three girls approach her, his daughters, strangers who carried his DNA and his features, but had been shaped entirely without his influence. For 20 minutes, Mark observed from a distance, gathering courage while nursing a scotch he no longer tasted. Finally, as the crowd thinned with people moving toward the dinner stations, he approached Sophia's small circle. "Sophia," he said, his voice sounding foreign to his own ears. She turned slowly, her expression betraying nothing but the slightest arch of an eyebrow. Not surprise, recognition. "Mark Thompson," she replied with studied neutrality. "How unexpected." "You look," he began, then faltered, searching for appropriate words. "Successful? Accomplished? Adequate?" she supplied, each option loaded with meaning. "Or perhaps compatible with the Harvard environment is the phrase you're searching for?" Before he could respond, the three teenagers approached, their conversation with a Nobel laureate apparently concluded. "Mom, the Stanford dean wants to speak with you about our project," said the tallest of the three, her confidence unmistakable. Mark felt the physical impact of the moment. His daughters stood inches away, calling another person Mom, without ever having called anyone Dad. "Girls," Sophia said with controlled composure, "this is Mark Thompson, an old acquaintance." The girls offered polite smiles and formal handshakes, completely unaware of the emotional tempest before them. "Harvard, class of 1998, correct?" asked the one with slightly longer hair. "I read your article on emerging markets in last month's Harvard Business Review. I found your analysis of technological implementation in developing economies insufficiently substantiated." Mark blinked, stunned by the articulate critique from a teenager who didn't know she was his daughter. "Thompson and Partners has performed 17% below the S&P index for the last 3 quarters, added another casually. "Mom teaches us to analyze all major market players as an exercise." The conversation was mercifully interrupted when a senator approached to congratulate Sophia, providing temporary relief from the suffocating tension. The girls drifted away to speak with a group of MIT professors, leaving Mark and Sophia momentarily alone. "There," he started, unable to complete the thought. Your biological daughters? Yes, Sophia confirmed matter-of-factly. My daughters in every other aspect that matters. Why didn't you ever tell me? He asked, voice unsteady. The look Sophia gave him contained 15 years of concentrated incredulity. You said I was a burden to your career, that children were incompatible with your future, that I was inadequate. Your exact words, Mark. I have an excellent memory. A photographer approached, requesting a photo of the inspiring CEO with her daughters. As Sophia moved to comply, Mark grasped her elbow gently. We need to talk, privately, please. Something in his desperate tone must have triggered her curiosity. Terrace, 10 minutes, she replied before gliding away to join her daughters for the photograph. The night air on the plaza's terrace carried the first hint of spring, though winter's chill hadn't fully retreated. The Manhattan skyline sparkled against the darkness, a fitting backdrop for the confrontation 15 years in the making. Sophia stood at the stone balustrade, contemplating the city that had witnessed her lowest moment. I never imagined it would be you, Mark began, approaching cautiously. The billionaire tech innovator everyone admires. Clearly, she responded with a cold smile. That was precisely the problem. If I had known what? She interrupted. That I would build something greater than your most ambitious dreams? That those girls incompatible with your future would become prodigies universities compete over? That the immigrant without a Harvard degree would be honored by Harvard? Sophia shook her head. You wouldn't have believed it even if someone had told you. I'd like to know them, he said finally. Properly. And I would have liked help during those first years when I worked 18 hours a day while nursing 3 infants, Sophia countered. I would have liked them to have a father at school performances and during fever nights. But here we are. I can make it up to them, Mark insisted, a desperate gleam in his eyes. I have resources, connections. Sophia laughed, a genuinely amused sound. Mark, my company is worth more than your entire bank. My daughters have trust funds that could purchase your apartment as a vacation property. We don't need your resources or connections. The full reality of the situation finally hit Mark with devastating force. Before him stood not just the woman he had discarded, but an empire built despite him, not because of him. Do they know about me? He asked, voice diminished. They know their biological father chose not to participate in our lives. They know that choice reflects only on him, never on their worth. And they know they've been intensely loved by me, by my parents, and by the community we've built. A heavy silence fell between them. What do you want, Mark? Really? Sophia finally asked. For the first time in his life, Mark Thompson had no calculated answer. I don't know, he admitted. Seeing them, seeing you, realizing what I've lost. Ah, Sophia interrupted with sudden understanding. This isn't about them. It's about you feeling irrelevant upon discovering you weren't as essential as you thought. At that moment, the terrace door opened, and the triplets appeared. Mom, we're ready to go, announced the tallest one. We have that video conference with the Singapore developers early tomorrow. All 3 noticed the tension in the air, observing Mark with growing curiosity. Mr. Thompson seems disturbed, commented the middle one, always the most perceptive. Is everything all right? Emma's question hung in the air, crystallizing the moment into perfect clarity. Sophia looked at her daughters, intelligent, perceptive, strong, and then at Mark, whose face displayed the desperation of a man confronting the irrevocable consequences of his choices. Actually, Sophia answered with measured calm, there is something you should know. Mark paled, anticipating the revelation. Mr. Thompson and I knew each other long ago, she continued carefully, before you were born. The 3 teenagers glanced between their mother and the unsettled stranger, connecting invisible dots with the characteristic quickness of their brilliant minds. He's our biological father, Ava stated calmly, not as a question but as a conclusion drawn from available evidence. Mark swallowed hard, surprised by their immediate perception. "Yes," Sophia confirmed simply. "He is." A weighted silence enveloped the group as the girls processed this information. Their expressions shifted subtly, not with shock or anger, but with careful analytical assessment. "That explains the eye color," Emma observed pragmatically. "And the predisposition to migraines we didn't inherit from you, Mom." "Why now?" Olivia asked, addressing Mark directly. "Why approach after 15 years?" The question, delivered without accusation but with surgical precision, left Mark speechless. How could he explain that he hadn't planned this encounter? That his presence here was coincidence, not choice? He stammered. "I didn't know about you. Not really." "That contradicts basic principles of causality," Ava responded. "A pregnancy with triplets at 5 months is difficult to ignore or forget." Mark realized he wasn't dealing with emotional children, but with young women possessing exceptional intellect and a clear-eyed perspective on the world. "You're right," he admitted, opting for the honesty he had never offered their mother. "I knew about the pregnancy. I chose to leave. It was the worst decision of my life." The girls exchanged glances, communicating silently as only multiples can. "We appreciate your honesty," Olivia stated formally, "but that establishes no obligation on our part." In the ballroom below, guests had begun to notice the terrace conversation. Jonathan Harrington, the association president, approached Richard Kensington with curiosity. "What's happening up there? Aren't those Sophia's daughters with Mark Thompson?" Speculation spread quickly. Smartphones captured images of the terrace group, and within minutes, whispers circulated among the attendees. Mark Thompson, respected banker, was having a confrontation with billionaire Sofia Rodriguez and the daughters he had apparently abandoned. On the terrace, oblivious to the growing murmurs, Mark made his desperate pitch. "I'd like to get to know you, really know you. Perhaps we could have dinner, or I could visit San Francisco. I have a summer house in Napa." "Mr. Thompson," Emma interrupted politely, "we're in our final year of high school, preparing for college while managing a STEM education foundation for disadvantaged girls and contributing to our mother's company R&D department. Our schedule doesn't permit impulsive commitments." Mark felt the sting of formal rejection, articulated in terms he himself might have used in business meetings to dismiss unwanted proposals. "I understand," he replied, struggling to maintain composure. "But I am your father." "Biologically," Ava corrected. "Fatherhood is a set of behaviors and choices, not merely genetics. By definition, you haven't performed that role." At that moment, the terrace door opened again. Jonathan Harrington appeared, followed by several association board members, all wearing expressions of growing discomfort. "Is everything all right here?" Jonathan asked, glancing nervously between Sophia and Mark. "Perfectly," Sophia answered with dignity. "We were just concluding a long-overdue conversation." Mark suddenly realized his carefully constructed reputation was crumbling in real time. The judgmental looks from his peers, the whispers, the understanding spreading through the ballroom below, all indicated his past had finally caught up with him. "Mark," Jonathan asked hesitantly, "are you the father of Sophia's daughters?" Mark's silence provided sufficient answer. "Come, girls," Sophia said calmly. "Our presentation is finished, and we have commitments tomorrow." The triplets nodded in unison, turning to follow their mother. Mark stepped forward, desperate to prolong the moment. "Please," he implored, "can I at least have your contact information? An email?" Sophia paused and turned, regarding him with an expression not of anger or triumph, but of complete indifference, the most devastating emotion she could offer. "You know what's truly extraordinary, Mark? It's not that I built an empire. It's not that our daughters are exceptional. It's that for over a decade I never thought about you. We simply moved on." The words hit Mark like a physical blow. "Come, girls," Sophia continued. "Our driver is waiting." As they walked away, Olivia briefly stopped and turned toward Mark. "Mr. Thompson, I recently completed a study on decision-making patterns and their long-term impacts. If you're interested, I could send you a copy. Your case would make a fascinating field study in how a single inadequate decision can permanently alter a life's trajectory." With that final offer, not of familial connection but of scientific analysis of his failure, Olivia followed her mother and sisters to the elevator. In the plaza lobby, guests respectfully parted as Sophia and the triplets passed. Not with pity or scandal, but with reverence amplified by the newly discovered drama. The story already circulated. The woman abandoned pregnant by an arrogant banker had returned as a force of nature, billionaire and victor, accompanied by the daughters he had rejected. The following day, the story reached financial press. The Wall Street Journal published a detailed profile of Sophia, discreetly mentioning the unexpected encounter with her daughter's biological father during the gala. Forbes was less subtle with its online article, "From Abandoned Barista to Billionaire: How Sofia Rodriguez Proved Her Wall Street Ex-Boyfriend Wrong About Everything." In his Manhattan office, Mark faced the consequences. 2 important meetings were canceled. A significant institutional client, a foundation led by a woman, requested transfer to another manager. His second divorce, which had been relatively private, resurfaced in financial blogs, establishing a pattern of questionable behavior with women. His third ex-wife, reading about the incident, sent him a terse message. "Now I understand why you always resisted having children. The universe spared 3 children from being abandoned like those girls." 1 week later, as Sophia conducted a board meeting in San Francisco, her assistant entered discreetly. "Ms. Rodriguez, there's an email from Mark Thompson that the system flagged as priority based on your parameters." Sophia paused, considering. "What's the subject?" "Acknowledgement and formal request. There are documents attached." That evening, after the girls had retired to study, Sophia finally opened the email. "Sophia, I expect neither forgiveness nor relationship. I now understand the magnitude of what I lost and the irreversibility of my choices. I've attached documents establishing substantial funds for each of the girls, independent of any contact with me. I know they don't need financial support, but it's the minimum I can offer. I've also announced my resignation from the bank, effective immediately. I cannot undo the past, but I can at least act with integrity now, publicly acknowledging my daughters and the extraordinary woman who raised them alone. I won't seek contact unless invited. This is your triumph story, not my redemption narrative. Mark." Sophia closed the email without responding, not from anger or vengeance, but because there was nothing to say. The chapter had closed long ago. 3 months later, the triplets received their acceptance letters. Olivia to MIT, Emma to Stanford, Ava to Harvard. The irony of the last wasn't lost on Sophia, who celebrated each achievement with equal enthusiasm. "Harvard, huh?" she commented to Ava. "Interesting choice. Their environmental science program is ideal for my research," Ava explained pragmatically. "And perhaps it's poetic that I'll attend the institution he used to disqualify you." Sophia embraced her daughter, marveling at her perception. "You know we don't need to prove anything to anyone, right?" Ava smiled. "We're not proving, Mom. We're simply living our extraordinary lives. The fact that this contradicts his limited expectations is merely a statistical bonus." That night, as Sophia watched her 3 daughters animatedly discussing their futures, she felt a peace she had sought for years. It wasn't closure from confronting Mark, nor validation from her success. It was the understanding that true victory wasn't in proving him wrong, but in creating a life so full and meaningful that his absence had become irrelevant. The girls would grow without the burden of abandonment, carrying instead the unshakable certainty of their own worth. In his empty Manhattan apartment, Mark Thompson contemplated the same moon Sophia viewed from the West Coast. On his desk, 3 detailed folders about Olivia, Emma, and Ava's accomplishments, compiled by a research assistant at considerable expense. Beside them, the Forbes article with Sophia on the cover, confidently smiling beneath the headline, "The Clean Water Visionary Transforming Global Communities." There was no bitterness in his contemplation, only the belated realization that his business decision 15 years earlier had been his greatest miscalculation. While he had built a respectable investment portfolio, Sophia had built a legacy. While he accumulated properties, she had cultivated 3 brilliant minds who would change the world. And that, Mark finally realized, was the most poetic justice: to live the rest of his life knowing exactly what he had lost, while Sophia and her daughters moved forward, completely free from the weight of his absence, their extraordinary lives the ultimate proof of how profoundly he had misjudged.